Start. Great. So we'll call this meeting to order at 5:02. And because I have COVID and don't feel well, I'm going to ask Charlotte if she's there, if she would manage the meeting. I can't see for sure if she's there.
Okay. I'm here.
Are you there? Okay. And I'm going to stay on the meeting, but I
I'm
think,
here.
okay,
Oh, I'm here, Janet.
good. Are you able to manage the meeting and which is really focused on the financial form?
I am. Are you ready to turn it over?
Yes, it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry you don't feel well. We all are, and you have all of our sympathy for sure.
Thank you. First day, so it's
All
really
right.
comfortable.
Yeah. So this is the Board of Abatement, and we have some new people. So maybe we should have some introductions. Should we introduce everyone or just new people? Maybe everyone should just sort of say who they are. I'm Charlotte Anna Bassage, and Janet, as you know, just heard, asked if I would chair this meeting.
I'm the select board.
Tegan Dykeman Brown, town clerk and clerk for the Board of Abatement as well, technically.
Bill Davis.
John McCullough, Lister, zoning administrator, planning commission, design advisory board.
Et cetera. That's a lot.
That's it? Yeah. Jordan Keys, select board.
Wilson Hughes, Lister.
Keys, we need Lister.
Michael Lino, Justice of Peace.
Tina Bielenberg or Christina Bielenberg, Justice of the Peace.
Christina Holly, select board.
And Winchester Select Board.
Corey Bradley, town administrator, treasurer, road commissioner.
Barbara Cutler, Justice of the Peace.
Scott Bassage, something or other, justice and peace, various things, justice and peace.
Oh, that's right. That's why they're here.
All right, so we have an agenda. And the first thing on the agenda, does anybody want to add or subtract, add anything to the agenda? Do we need to cover anything additional? All right, then the first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes of May 13th, which Tegan, of course, sent us. If somebody would move it, then we can discuss. If someone would move approval, we could then discuss.
I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Thank you, Wilson.
I second.
Any comments on the minutes?
Mainly a question. I noticed, Craig Line obviously was there and he's not listed as present, and I don't know whether that's, and
He wasn't the last one.
Was he there?
is he on?
He was on
the
Zoom,
15th.
wasn't he?
No. Not listed,
Is he listed as present on Zoom?
no.
No.
All right, I will add them.
Unless, I mean, if the intention is to only identify board members, the Board of Abatement, then that should be made clear. And then others could
Yeah.
be listed.
Yes.
as present.
Yes, I agree. Yes,
I will
good
add them.
idea. Okay, any other comments? Then, can we accept the minutes as amended? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda is to review and possibly approve the financial disclosure form.
There's a couple extras down here by John. And then you all got an email too.
Okay. And who would like to help us see the changes and to talk about the form? There were several people working on it.
So there were, but it was Janet and Dylan, who was also not here,
Ah,
and I was putting them into the document, so I suppose I was. I think that's everybody who worked on it. So we had talked in the last meeting about using the very detailed form we had at the worksheets, and then having a more simplified version for people to turn in, and then that seemed like a lot of work, and so we settled in that meeting on, let's just have one simpler back and front. Yeah, and so this is kind of what we settled on. It took all those categories we had minutely drawn out there and just sort of made them broad categories. Itemized every little thing purchased.
and I think we should also consider, when we're considering this information form, the change to the abatement application, which notes please complete the financial disclosure form to the best of your ability. Please also attach a sheet, etc. And we did talk about having someone act as a helper to anybody who wanted, who asked to fill that out. Tegan, would you say that when you give somebody an abatement request?
I think so. Usually they oftentimes end up talking on the phone or emailing back and forth. And I usually tell them something along the lines of, if you have specific questions, if there's anything that you're not sure about, that they should get back to me, and I'm happy to fill them in. So that's kind of the way that that's gone in the past.
Yeah, I think it would also be just really helpful for people to know that if we're gonna require this financial information form, that we are happy to help with that too.
Yeah.
So that because not everybody is used to dealing with putting in finances together.
Should we also add that to the form under the italicized part at the top? You need help? Just ask.
Yeah, yeah. I think that would be helpful. Anyone else?
I just want, maybe the point of discussion. If you look at the statutory basis for requesting abatement, I'm not sure this form is appropriate for all of those categories.
I see,
I don't know.
I see.
Verify that.
It says specifically if you're applying due to inability to pay.
All right, but is that, if you look at the statutory categories, is that clear? Which category or categories this applies to?
So, yeah,
It
here,
says it right there on the form.
yes, it does say it on the form itself, based on inability to pay.
Okay, I guess.
But you don't-
In front of us. Some of the
Okay.
categories, I don't.
Right.
Right.
So are you suggesting that after the category that says taxes of persons unable to pay taxes, interest, that should say, see the financial,
See, title such sections and then.
and then,
This is an example, because there are some reasons in the statute for asking for abatement. that
Yeah.
are Not based on.
yes, inability to pay. So what do you suggest, Tina?
I'm suggesting that we include this, just the statute and the sections that are applicable. So this is, so I know that we have this form, okay? We have the statutory reasons here, but we're going to require this form. We're not going to require it for 24 VSA 1535K4, are we?
No, no, but this does say based on inability to pay, so should we, do you want to clarify that in
That's
some
what
way?
I'm suggesting you do.
So
Okay.
would you, like, this financial information form is required for any applicant requesting an abatement based on inability to pay tax interest or fees per 24 VSA 1535A3?
Right,
Yes.
and it may, you may need it for a person who's died insolvent, I mean, if it's, that's my question, are we going to require whoever's handling the estate or is the representative to complete this entire form, or?
Yeah, and what about real or personal property lost or destroyed during the year?
Right.
That might be appropriate also.
I think it should be required for the unable to pay, and then maybe it's an option available to present information for the other categories. Does that make sense? Because if your whole house burned down, you don't need to fill out a form about how much you spend on groceries to say my whole house.
Yes,
burned
burn down,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So we're,
Well,
uh,
one solution would be to put the statutory section.
Section.
So that it absolutely would.
Okay.
That we want that information.
okay. Can we do that? Certainly. Begin.
So you want me to put it for inability to pay or for more than one, like one clarification?
Well. We've got A range, but clearly,
Yes.
A1 may or may not,
But that's why, do you want a sentence that says you may also find this form helpful if you're applying under A1 and A4?
I'm opening this
Yeah.
up for discussion.
It seems to me that this part in red might be a good place to put that, because people are paying attention to what's in red, perhaps more than the top here. Do you think that's-
Fine, I just, since we were talking about the fact that we were to each other.
Is what's in red, what's actually the applicants are going to see? I thought what's in red was just for us to see what Tegan was recommending we add.
It was the recommended language to add, but it was just a suggestion. We can certainly change it in any way we need to.
I like
Right, but I
that.
don't think it's going to the applicant with that text in red, is it?
We are here to discuss whether it is or whether we
Oh,
want to change
okay.
that.
Yeah,
text.
I mean, it's certainly possible to do that.
Yeah.
Whether they download it online or,
Got a question
Yeah.
to clarify, I think in previous dialogues, this type of form can be something that we can request, but we can't say that we require it. Is that right? So we can't force anybody to fill this information out and submit it. Is that a fair characterization?
that was not my understanding. Am I wrong? So, because,
So, excuse me, I think we can require it for ability to pay. I think we can't, obviously, if somebody doesn't want to fill it out, then they don't file an application. So there's no requirement that people give us their financial information unless they're requesting an abatement for inability to pay. There is also something in the procedure, I believe, that says that we can ask for any additional information that we need in any of the categories. So that might be where there are pieces of the form that would actually be helpful to us, but not as a.
I think that's fair, and so I have kind of a follow-up question. I'm wondering, because there are so many potential options to select rather than trying to parse out which one should apply to which and what somebody should feel required to submit or not, we modify the language a little bit, so that we're in that section where we're just listing examples of things to submit, relative to their application, for the destroyed proprities, like there may be other documentation that they're willing to give up, for or for an error or mistake. It'd be nice if they were bringing that information and submitting that as facts for consideration. So I think if we add a couple of bullet points and then just modify the language, the lead-in language in red, strongly recommending supporting documentation, and then where we list the financial disclosure specifically, we can say relative to requests for persons unable to pay.
So, yes, it seems to me, if somebody is asking for a financial help, they ought to be willing to share financial information, and so we do need to be really clear. If you're asking based on an inability to pay, we need financial information, because we can't make a decision without it. So, however we do it, as long as that is really clear and that it might be appropriate in other instances as well, yeah. So, Tegan, is that specific enough for you?
So I was thinking something along the lines of, we strongly suggest that you submit one or more of the following documents. In particular, if you are applying based on inability to pay, financial information, we cannot grant an abatement without sufficient financial information
Yes,
as evidence.
yes,
Good.
yes.
And then I would have the 2 bullets plus the financial disclosure as the options.
Yeah.
Good,
That makes.
good. Yeah,
Just, so. Greg Line, is all of the taxes he wants to abate? The
Yes,
entire amount?
yes.
Yeah, but that's a different hearing.
yes,
That's not tonight.
exactly.
I
That,
understand that, but I just don't know what we're talking about here.
we're talking about anybody
Anybody.
Okay,
who asks for an abatement based on inability to pay, and in the past, most people have offered that information. But we haven't been specific about what do we expect? So this would be
We also
standardized.
also ask for a tax return?
We did not,
That's a number one, I think, that tells you everything. At least it tells you income.
it does tell you something. So,
So can I jump in?
yeah,
I couldn't quite hear, but Bill, were you
Yeah.
suggesting tax return as a supporting document or somebody was? I would have some reservations
Yes.
in that. There's a lot of other information on a tax return that I don't think, and we can't really promise to keep it confidential. And tax returns, of course, don't deal with assets, and for inability to pay, assets are probably a fairly significant component of a person's ability. So I think that the reason we went with the financial form is that we could go directly to the information that we wanted without asking for a tax return.
Additionally, some people are in arrears and they don't have their tax documents. Unfortunately.
that's a good point. Hadn't thought of that. Other comments?
So I'd like to make a suggestion on the first chart. I think there should be an entry in this first chart of monthly expenses for childcare, as opposed to wrapping it under other, just because for some people, childcare is so significant. I would want that to be in the forefront, so I think that should have a line of its own.
I think we're only considering a motion to approve just the form, though, or we look closure and the application.
They're 2 different
Yeah.
items.
Right. So we've been talking about the application, and we
So,
could wrap that, I think, or wrap up amendments to that application before moving to
to the
discussing
wording,
the other one.
yes, so as Tegan just said, there are 2 items on the agenda. One is to review and approve and possibly approve the
Oh, I
form.
see, okay.
And then the second one is any adjusted wording on the application. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, Barbara, hang on to that until the next one. So, I believe at the last meeting, we did agree that we wanted to have a financial disclosure form that we, would require. And so here it is, we're looking at version 2, and, do we wish, are we ready to talk about approving this financial, a financial disclosure form?
Yes.
Okay, good. Are we approving this financial disclosure form?
Well, Barbara just made a suggestion for it.
I
Well,
have yeah, so
maybe we need to approve the wording first and then approve the form.
Okay, so are you asking to approve the application or the financial form?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Which comes first? Do we approve the wording and include Barbara's suggestion and maybe possible other suggestions?
Well, Barbara's suggestion is on the financial disclosure form, not the rules of procedure that we were discussing.
Yeah, I was doing it in the order of the agenda, but I'm following your lead here.
All right,
Well, I think there was consensus on the application that seemed like pretty clear language. And consensus around, the edit, so I'd make a motion to approve the application, and then we can have a dialogue around the financial
I'm
disclosure.
going to say one thing, is that it says, you want them to, fill out the financial disclosure form. This thing says, what is financial information?
Yes. You need to change that.
yes, thank you. Good catch.
Which do we want to call?
Disclosure. All right,
So the changes that I have are the portion down below with the suggestion, or the strongly suggest that you submit one or more of the following documents, and then also Scott's suggestion that we put a little note saying, if you need help, just ask for it. Those are the changes I've heard.
Would it make sense to also include something like, if there's other information you would like the board to consider, please include, give us that, attach that.
Well, there is a bullet that says a brief description on the basis of your abatement.
Did you mean any other documents? we
Any
might
other
find helpful?
documents? Yeah, yeah.
all right, so those are the adjustments to the abatement application. Are we ready to vote on that? All right, all those in favor then, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
We didn't, no one made a motion or seconded the motion. Did they?
I'll move it.
Thank you.
You're right, thank you. You can tell I'm rusty at this.
I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't.
Yes, exactly, yes, yes. Yeah, pipe up if I'm happy to have some people tell me I'm not doing it properly. Okay, so we will turn to the financial disclosure form itself. Okay, and Barbara, this is where we talk about childcare.
Yeah.
You're right, the childcare is a major expense. Not quite in the same category as pets.
Sometimes.
Yes. Does that seem agreeable?
Mhm.
Other comments? Does anything at the top need to be changed to work with the revised application?
As previously suggested, it should parallel what we call the
Disclosure form, yes, yes. And, keep the piece that says based on ability to pay.
But the very first sentence, the financial information form is required.
Disclosure.
Yes, I'll change that.
Yeah, oh, okay, you got that.
So
Sorry,
after-
disclosure form is the required language. I was keying in on this time.
After we had the discussion, I amended that to, this financial disclosure form is strongly recommended for any applicant requesting an abatement based on inability to pay per 24 VSA 1535 acres.
Good.
I like that we have, said that this is this is a quasi judicial, hearing and what, the implication is for the public release of the information they give us. I think that's very helpful. Other,
In the table, breaking out childcare from other expenses, I wonder if we have healthcare and prescriptions and then list insurance costs and out of pockets, but we don't necessarily list. Well, I guess that would be an out of pocket expense, but I guess medical bills in particular, that may have been incurred. I know it's kind of dicey territory to try to get disclosure around, but if there have been significant.
yeah. So healthcare, that's what I thought healthcare
Okay.
meant, and then insurance is one thing, and then
Sure.
what are you paying?
Okay.
So all of those are medical expenses.
We did change it to medical expenses. We thought that.
Is that better? Is that clearer?
I think that might be a little
Yeah.
clearer.
Yeah, because I'm not sure why it says healthcare prescriptions.
Medical expenses,
Better.
and keep the parentheses.
Yes.
I closed that parentheses that was open. So. Good catch.
Oh, yes, yes, okay. Yeah,
I have a question about the mortgage payment, which is listed at the very top
Mhm.
under housing and then down at the bottom again. Do we want to have it in both places? Down at the bottom, there's value of property,
Yeah.
amount
Yeah.
remaining and monthly mortgage payment due. Do
well,
we want it in both places is the question, or do we want?
are we asking separate questions about what is your basic mortgage payment, and then how much of your mortgage are you, many people may be behind, and so
Oh, is that what that means?
I would look at the top as
As
what is your mortgage, what, how much are you required to pay a month? And then I would also say, you know, monthly due means sort of, how are you doing on your mortgage?
That is not clear.
But it
That
would-
is not-
it's gonna be monthly, it would be,
Yeah.
it'd be.
Right.
So monthly, so. What does that mean? Mortgage in arrears or something is what we're getting at the bottom?
All mortgage payments due.
Because
Was-
amount remaining on mortgage is also.
Can I,
Well, that doesn't tell us if they're in arrears on their mortgage.
Wait, Janet has something.
so it seems to me that there's two questions on the mortgage. One is how much do you pay a month? And the other is how large is your mortgage? You know, how much do you still owe on your house? And I don't have the form in front of me because I'm on my computer here. But I want to be sure that we get at both questions because they're slightly different.
And I'd say there's almost three, because I think that we've got. Part of this is trying to define or help them define what their monthly expenses are. Part of it is giving us information about what their assets may be. And then the third is an assessment of what their outstanding amounts due are, if they have back payments that are due, so that we can get a better assessment of, you know, how much they're in arrears, you know, is an abatement consideration going to help them out of an acute period of financial distress and move them through that. Or, and I guess also, do they have assets such that could be leveraged to do that without abatement? I mean, that's, and from my perspective, that seems to be kind of the basis of what we're trying to get at. So we may want to have the top table be more well-defined as what are your monthly expenses as a way, as like a budgeting exercise, and then we have something more clearly defined as an asset categorization, and another one of bills due essentially.
Yeah, and we don't have a, well, it does say other debts and liabilities, but, you're right, it's not clear what we're really asking. But we do want to know, are people behind on their mortgage? Are people behind? Because and we usually ask in our meetings, do you have a plan for how you're gonna pay your future taxes? And that seems to be a very relevant question, so I'm not sure how we get at that.
That's a bullet point on this form.
Yeah, where is that?
On the one we just approved, the
Yeah.
hearing request. One
Yes,
of the bullets is a plan to prevent the need for an abatement request.
excellent, excellent, I'm so glad that's there, thank you.
This is just an information sheet so that when the person does come in, that if we see something glaring, that we will ask the question
Yes.
to get the info. You know,
Right.
to expect to get all the info on this form is
Impossible,
impossible.
impossible, but it is
But
very,
start-
it's
starting
quite,
point,
it's
yeah.
pretty thorough
Yeah.
at the same time. But I think we do want to know, are you behind on your mortgage? If so, how much?
Yeah.
I'll just ask that.
Yes, are you behind on your mortgage?
And other bills.
Yes, what is your mortgage payment? How much it remains on your mortgage, and are you behind?
So,
It
so
doesn't ask
maybe,
for credit card debt anywhere on here.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't ask for credit card debt.
Oh,
It
yes,
just says other debts and liabilities. They didn't have a
It should
chart
be
of debt.
specific. Some people have a lot of money in
Yes.
credit cards.
they do, yes. Is it sufficient to say under other debts and liabilities, for example, credit card?
Is there anything else we want to put under that?
Any other specifics for,
student loans.
I mean, they may be behind on their car payments. They may,
I think we've got current value amount owed monthly payment due, yeah, but it doesn't
they
ask.
may
if you're behind.
owe the IRS.
That's what they said, that's the first one we did last time, had 20 pages.
I know that.
We gotta
Yeah.
cut it someplace.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's helpful. Because, somebody might not, necessarily say, oh, yeah, I owe the IRS. Or, student loans. All right. So we've got several examples under other debts and liabilities to help people think about what that category means. All right,
Going back to the mortgage question, does that mean those three in the middle between the charts, value of property, amount remaining on mortgage, instead of monthly mortgage payment, do we want to ask that question about being behind, or do we want to keep that in addition to the request for mortgage information at the top?
I was gonna suggest splitting out housing at the top
Okay,
and having one that's monthly mortgage payment. And then the next one be other housing expenses.
you all like to swoosh things in here.
I
The
know.
formatting on this form is always
It's
the worst
hard.
part. Okay, so
And then we could change the monthly mortgage payment down below to any outstanding.
are you behind? Yeah,
what do people think of that?
I think that's helpful.
I see Janet is collecting, whether she's the
Jenna, do you have some comments? You need to unmute.
Sorry, on the way we're dealing with the mortgage, I think those suggestions are fine. I think it's all of it useful information, so. if somebody's behind on their mortgage, they're probably also behind on fuel bills and car payments and so on. Yeah.
To make that easier, on that top table, rather than having just the one column, we can have one that is, monthly bill or budget, and then the other one with another column for overdue balances, or
Do you want to do the same thing for the vehicle column?
Yeah, yeah.
I have a feeling that asking people for a itemized list of everything that they're behind on is going to be tough for people by the time they're at that point. So I just want to be cautious that we don't get too far into the weeds on that kind of information. I just think it's difficult for people to pull it together.
Barbara,
So, I'm wondering, this second graph on here, chart on here, do we really need to know the kind of cars that they own and ATVs and so forth? It seems to me if we need more space to allow Tegan to format some more stuff up in the first chart, we could just add a line at the first chart for cost, total of all automobile payments or
vehicle
debts or
stuff. Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And I'm not sure why we need this chart down here.
So I pulled it out kind of for the same reason we wanted to do that list under other debts and liabilities, is you might not think about your ATV or your snowmobile as being something that we want to know about unless you see it here on the list. That was my thought.
Yeah, that's a good point, because people might not, maybe there could just be an asterisk next to that listing with a footnote.
Know what people's vehicles, how many vehicles they have. I think that for a lot of people, that's an asset. That I don't know.
If you're gonna include them all, you need to include votes, I think.
I will add focus, we keep it.
Well. Barbara, are you suggesting that go up in this?
Well, when I
Upper?
looked at it, I just didn't understand why we needed to know what kind of vehicle they all own. It just seems more detailed, and we're not gonna make a decision based on that. And it just seemed like it was another one of the monthly expenses. It's just that we spilled it out into and expanded it in its own separate chart, and I
Yes, we
wasn't
did.
quite sure why.
Okay,
I think it's important to see some of this stuff because, if I'm making a decision to have somebody who doesn't have a snowmobile or a four-wheeler and everything else, and to say, oh, okay, we'll pay your taxes, but, or sucker down the line, paying his taxes and going without. I think that's a big, thing with this.
It's a valid point.
maybe we just take kind of back to the previous comments, maybe we just take that table and split it so that we have it represented as a cost, monthly payment cost for vehicles and other boats and et cetera, but then also listed again under assets, for somebody to disclose the value of all of those things as well.
and we do have it there.
And, yeah, and then we just avoid that middle, we capture what should be
Yeah.
the monthly carrying costs of those things if they've got payments.
Okay.
And then we capture
See
what their value is.
What the
now
value
in
is on the assets. That sounds,
And I think Janet's point is fair about, the outstanding balance, we can just ask. And
Yes.
make notes and
We can
in the
ask.
margins adjacent to that as
Certainly.
we roll through it.
absolutely, we can
Think
ask.
about
Does
it.
that work for you, Steve?
Yeah, that was just,
Yep,
I'd like to, have a feeling that they're trying or, we're
It's
just
true.
paying for their.
some people have very full driveways.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Oh, Tegan, you're good at keeping up with us. How you
Oh,
doing?
I'm doing my best, so. For vehicles, we're going to remove the big chart
Yep,
and add it to total monthly expenses. With just a category for monthly, and
Yeah.
then maybe a little asterisk that says don't forget about your vote, your AT, you know, in a nice professional way. And then keep the one under financial assets.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah.
okay, yes, then I have that.
Okay,
Does that capture? That captures monthly due
Yep.
for all vehicles, but it doesn't capture total. Well, the value it captures under assets, it doesn't capture total debt associated with it.
Did you buy it last year and you're paying it off still, or have you had it
Right.
forever and it's not worth
I
it?
think getting back to Janet's comment, I think that's a fair question that we can
That we can
go
ask.
through. So rather than, you know, burdening or making this feel like too much of a burden
Yeah.
for anybody, if there's kind of a sniff test that maybe there may be some assets worth leveraging or with equity, to consider, we can ask that question as well as what any back due bills would be for that particular item.
yeah. Scott?
In the rules of procedure, which the applicant has read, under 4F, we talk about allow the taxpayer to prevent verbal and documentary evidence supporting the request. It might, would it make sense for some, I mean, we keep thinking of more things we want. Would it make sense to add something in there, like, for example, or things, information such as, rather than try to get everything on this one form? And the procedure is not on the agenda, but
Yeah, where are you looking?
the rules of procedure, different, whole different.
Oh,
form.
that's a whole different form, the rules of
It's the
procedure.
back of this, but we hadn't made it.
Oh, I see.
There were no proposed changes to it, so I didn't print it out, sorry.
So if you printed it out, it says abatement on the front and on the back, rules of procedure. Okay. Thank you, Scott, because I didn't notice that.
And to repeat it, 4F, 4 is all about the hearing itself, and 4F is allow the taxpayer to present verbal and documentary evidence supporting the abatement request to the board.
That sounds good. Are you suggesting?
Well, if we just keep, if we just keep piling things on, maybe we could put it there in as, for example, student debt, amount owed on your vehicles or blah, 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 instead of trying to shoehorn it into Tegan's form.
We can also just ask them when they're.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can, I like that. We can also just ask them.
Yeah.
Because, a
And-
hearing that goes both ways is a better hearing. In my opinion. Pardon? You-
I get, I mean, just for the efficiency of everybody's time, I think it's nice to try to get as much of that information up front as possible so that we're asking more for clarifications of that and that's where.
So Tegan, you said that you frequently have more than one conversation. And is that because people ask you what it is that they should include or what they should say?
So my sample size is 2 right now, so I can't
I
tell you
see.
how it always
Thank you.
goes or usually
Yeah.
goes. One of them was just very anxious about the procedure.
Okay.
And anxious about coming and talking to this big group of
Yeah.
people, and so that was most of the conversations. With the other applicant, it was more about, I don't even know, wanting to make sure that we scheduled it appropriately so that they could be here, wanting to make sure. I don't even know, I think
Okay.
we just emailed back and forth a number of
Okay.
times, yeah.
So, good. What I hear is that this is a back and forth at the beginning part, and it does seem appropriate that you should be as helpful as you can be, but you are that way with all things. that affect the, so, all right, where are we? Hang on, before you go, Barbara, where are we? We're no, I'm asking in terms of the changes that we've made. we've made several changes and we've condensed the vehicle part. We've clarified mortgages. We've given examples for debts and liabilities. We've changed a little bit in the introductory part.
Could I jump in with a question? Tegan, when you read something, some introductory language, where it said that I think it said that the form is strongly recommended, was the phrase, and I'm curious whether we've decided not to require it, but only to recommend it. I thought we were requiring it, so, anyway, just trying to understand.
Well, we do need to be clear about that. So thank you for asking.
I think the point was made that you can't make anyone do anything. And so we can tell them that this is something that they should do, but we can't deny them the right to a hearing because they didn't fill out financial disclosure form, I believe.
We can deny them.
Yeah.
Yes, we can deny the abatement.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so that was the wording that was gonna go in the abatement hearing request was, you know, if we don't have enough information, we will not be able to grant your request on any grounds, so.
Yeah.
I think that's important language, so I, you know, put it into context of why, and then, you know, I also kind of struggle with the require phrasing, because what's the teeth in that, and then, so I wonder if that goes to we request and strongly encourage, and then give the context for why.
I guess the thing that
Close enough to saying, flatly require, because I don't, it's a semantics thing, but it's.
Well, what do other towns do? I should have researched that, like in every town is private.
Require.
Well, I'm not very looking at Burlington, and I haven't really looked at the towns pretty close.
Some require it, some don't require anything beyond the basic abatement hearing request, because I looked at, I don't know, maybe half a dozen when we started talking about this, and some did have fairly detailed forms, and some didn't, so it's kind of all over the map.
I think Janet Weissman had a comment.
Janet, do you have a comment?
I guess I was just gonna say that I think it needs to be really clear, because if somebody applies and they're rejected because they didn't fill out the form and we haven't said it's required, then I think there is a sort of a legitimate criticism of our process. If it's necessary to fill out the form in order to receive an abatement for inability to pay, I think we should, and maybe the word required is problematic for people, but I think we need to say so.
I don't think we would be denying them because they didn't fill out the form. We would be denying them because they didn't provide sufficient evidence, whatever that was. If they don't bring the financial disclosure form, but they bring enough other evidence, like if they bring their whole file of folders of overdue bills and this, that, and the other, then they don't have to fill out a big checklist in my, sorry, Barbara.
If we want to not have to say the word required, we could say something in the introduction like, completing this financial disclosure form is a part of the application process. And just leave it at that without saying required or requested.
Like that better.
Okay.
So
Others?
just a reminder that we are running
Yeah.
short of time. Can I have one other suggestion on page
Yes,
2?
please.
Okay,
Yes,
toward the
please.
very bottom, just above the last folded line, the question that says, have you filed your homestead declaration in the current or previous years? That's actually 2 different questions that it could have a yes or a no for either one. So I think it needs to be broken out into this year, previous years, whatever it is we really want to know, because it may be yes for current previous years, but no for this year.
Well, it wasn't, the wording was specifically and to mean, yes, I've done it for all of them, or no, I haven't done it for all of those. That was my thinking, but I'm happy to be.
Yeah, and I'm sure,
Side on this.
Janet, do you have some comment
but-
there?
No, either way is fine.
So Barbara also just pointed out that we have about 5 minutes left, but we also have a hearing scheduled for later this month. So I think it's important for us to take the time we need for this for this form and to be clear about what we are going to expect at our hearings. So I think we're toward the end here. But let's make sure that we include everything we want to include before we wrap up. So are there other comments?
Yeah, I think that all we're looking for here is the baseline, so that we have an opportunity to try to treat everybody the same. And with, just by suggesting that they fill it out, it just helps us to treat them the same as everybody.
Exactly, and thank you.
What we vote for is.
Yes.
Doesn't really make any difference.
And thank you for reminding us that that's one of the reasons that we developed this in the first place, is so that everybody was on a level playing field in terms of what we expected. Because if we just say we'd like financial information, that's not very specific.
I would just say to people, if we need to change this down the road, we can do it.
Yes,
And maybe
Yeah.
the
Yes.
legislature,
Yes.
forming a committee to look at the town processes, will come up with a whole bunch of
Yeah.
suggestions about what we need.
absolutely. That is always true of any document, for sure. Barbara.
Thank you, Tina. So based on that, I've moved that we adopt this financial disclosure form with all the edits that Tegan has been capturing for us tonight, so that we can use it in an upcoming hearing, knowing that we could change it. It's a live document, a living document that we can change at any point in time, but that I move that we accept it as edited tonight.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Are you all ready to vote? All right, all those in favor, please, of Barbara's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the motion is passed. Thank you all.
So
There is one more item on our agenda.
Charlotte, before we get to that, so once I have made these changes, I should pass this on to our current applicant. You all give me
Yes,
that.
please. Yes, please.
Would you send it out to all?
Send it out to everybody.
Yes. All right, we have one more item on the agenda, which is new legislation regarding delinquent taxes and abatement. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this?
If that's me also. This came up last time, Janet brought it, but we didn't have a whole lot of time to talk about it. And it either passed or it hadn't quite passed yet, but now it's been circulating. I just wanted to point out some of the big things that affect us. There was a little bit of a wording change. To number 4. Instead of a manifest error on the part of the listers, it's a clear or obvious error on the part of the listers. We don't get any say there. They added something that I felt we were already kind of beginning to do. The written decision shall provide sufficient explanation to the decision shall address the arguments raised by the applicant. Prior to issuing a written decision, the relevant information or documentation related to the case. I feel we were doing a pretty good job with that, but that's now state law.
Okay,
It also said that the legislative body of the municipality by a majority vote may abate de minimis amounts of taxes,
Oh,
et
yeah.
cetera. So the select board did vote to
do that.
do under $15. We had done under $5 about 4 months ago, and then they will consider at some point in the tax year going in and doing that on their own so that we don't have to make it a bullet item. If anyone disagrees with that, I suggest you take it up with the select.
But maybe I need clarity, is that a decision for the whole board of maintenance? As opposed to the select board?
I think we did vote on that, didn't we?
No, but to address
the select board taking it over that
Yeah.
decision.
Oh, I see.
I think that,
I,
correct me if I'm wrong, but that rests with the Board of Abatement.
Well, the new statute, the amended statute says the legislative body of a municipality.
so that's the select board.
There is a big section about people coming and requesting abatement as a group, all for the same reason. I'm not sure why that has come about. I'm not sure what's happening, that groups of people are requesting abatement, but that is something we could anticipate happening at some point, and it gives a how-to of how to do that.
Well, that certainly would help when there's a flood
Like
that
when there's a flood.
diminishes the
Yeah.
property values.
Or pandemic.
And then they're putting together a working group to look at tax abatement and tax sales. So we'll probably get more information coming down about that soon. That's it. Any questions about that? My clock still says 5:57. We've got 3 more minutes.
Well, I appreciate the summary and, interpretation. That's very helpful.
One more thing,
Yes,
next hearing, I may not be here,
okay.
and probably other states, I could be here, it just depends on the schedule. So who's going to chair this next hearing?
Who's going to?
Craig's hearing.
Yeah, so let me jump in on that. Craig Line got another application in that he's already submitted, and it's set for a hearing on the 8th of July, am I right?
July 22.
July 22, we've got COVID brain. And I had asked Charlotte if she would manage that hearing, and she said she would. So that's the plan. And I'll be there, but I won't chair and I won't vote on it.
Okay,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
wonderful. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I don't think so. Thank you all.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Um,
Going off.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Scott. Thank you for telling me this Easter egg.
Oh, you're very. What?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Fashion, right? Thank you.
There were a lot of things. Yeah, of course.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, well, that's.
It was so fun. After an hour, it's just terrible.
Nice, right? Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Michael.
Okay,
Back to the question of the
Yeah.
professional engineer.
yes,
So he said, my understanding is that Larry agrees to that, that's fine.
yes,
But as we go, we're officially denying their copper dam design.
Get water.
So I don't know exactly.
they're denying it because it's not.
Because they're not stamped by PE.
We all got this in the town office.
So is that just like
It's in this one.
formality, cover your butt kind of?
That's what I asked. And he said it should just be procedural unless dam safety has an issue with it.
Yeah. So I guess that's sort of our message to Larry. Okay. It's not really-
I guess. Police know, did we do that, as usual arrangement?
Yeah, I'm just gonna move down to the end here, so.
Yeah, but usually, yeah.
Like that?
Okay. Or like that, so that you're all sort of facing everybody. Thank you.
Carrie, is this yours?
Later on.
And is this?
Just staying out.
Yeah.
Smell some pork.
Is that good, Ann?
Well, why don't you just go over here? And I'll move over to the house area.
Use it.
If I don't.
Right?
I don't know.
Still getting comfortable with the table. Second. Okay. Everybody ready to go? It is 6:05. Call the meeting to order. And roll into the administrative section of the agenda. First, I'd like to call for any additions that aren't currently represented on the agenda that's been circulated and warned. No.
Oh, you know what? I'd like to just get a quick brief. We do have a fire department, if you don't mind.
Sure, yep, so at the end of the administrative section, we'll just kind of report on that and give an update on it. Okay. Just kind of what the status is, but
Sure.
that sounds good. Would anybody would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from June 24th? Any further discussion or changes that like to be offered?
Sorry, I shouldn't second. I was absent. I'm abstaining.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. A vote to approve the board orders. So board orders were circulated and posted to the shared folder. everybody's had a chance to review. Were there any questions about the board orders? Not any of those. Is there a motion to approve the board orders as posted? And
That'll second.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Approving the hiring of Adeline and Grace as the 2024 swim instructors as recommended by the swim committee, and they had some applications in the shared drive as well. Does anybody have any questions about those, or I don't know? Daniel, do you want to speak, add any additional words or field questions?
I don't think so. I'm pretty excited about them.
Yeah.
Great.
It's always a major coup when we find something.
Good.
That's exciting. I entertain a motion to approve both applicants.
So moved.
Okay. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Accepting donations for the Lakes and Streams newsletter. I believe this is kind of part of a clarification that we received, or
No, this is going back to before you hired me, you devised a plan with the committee about their printed newsletter where you contributed 750 out of the operating budget, and they promised to fundraise a certain amount, which is the amount that's you need to approve in terms of donation, and then the balance is coming out of their reserve fund.
okay.
So the amount they raised is enough that we only have to pay $750? Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay.
And do we need to have a separate motion to accept those donations in the general fund, or does, and then allocate those? We had some kind of dialogue around how that works.
We're just gonna accept them into the general fund and pay out of the general fund, so that's fine.
Do you need specific amounts then for?
Yeah, I can give you that one. Just a moment. It is $329.62.
All right, so entertain a motion to accept donations for $300
$329.62.
$329.62 to the general fund to be reallocated to the Lakes and Streams newsletter, and then the balance covered by the budgeted $780.
$750.
$750.
Sure. So moved. Second.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a question?
Question, please. Thank you letters going to all those donors.
We just accepted one check. I was not involved with the fundraising. I don't know who the individual donors were.
Okay, is it okay with you if I check in with Noreen and see if we can get thank you letters to those donors? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that'd be fine, yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. Thank you. So authorizing the transfer from the general fund to close the grant funds for, to eliminate the deficit.
So we have two grant funds that are closed. One is the CLG Maple Corner Grant Fund, but I'm still not clear what those initials stand for.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. And the other one is the Emergency Planning Grant Fund. I know that was a grant provided by Regional Planning Commission to put together our emergency response plan. And in both cases, we show a deficit. We spent more than we took in for the grants, which is fine. We've already spent the money. But since those grants are closed, we're not expecting any more income. We might as well transfer funds from general fund into these two grant funds and close them, and then they will be zero, one and do two from reports going forward. That's the recommended action.
Is this just a bookkeeping thing?
Yes,
Or are these
just
special funds? Oh, it's just a bookkeeping.
It's just
Oh,
bookkeeping. The money's been spent. or nothing else is gonna happen, we're just closing the votes on these two funds.
And that requires a select board vote. Okay. I'll move to do that. Yeah, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right, thank you. Looks cleaned up. So that represent the most complicated bookkeeping,
No, not really.
Signing the ARPA resolution that was adopted on June 24th. Is everybody familiar with that resolution that was adopted?
It was a three-step process last time. Select, one of the steps was the select board adopted a resolution allocating $80,000 from the ARPA funds, 80,901 into the general fund to cover employee compensation. And so I just forgot to bring the resolution, the physical piece of paper, and I brought it tonight so you can sign.
Yeah.
You don't need to do anything now.
Okay. So you don't need a motion at all.
Nothing, just a reminder to get that done tonight. We'll take care of all the signing.
Okay, that sounds good. So as a kind of a quick update on the East Montpelier agreement. So we had Bill was in attendance, Rose, you were there as well, I believe. So both select boards were represented as well as the fire department, and there was good dialogue around the proposed edits that Anne had prepared and sent for consideration. From my perspective, there was kind of consensus on adopting those, but they wanted to send it to their lawyer to just have a once over essentially of that. And the feedback from their lawyer was that it's a really messy document and they had some pretty substantive changes. And so the plan at the moment, I think, is to, well, it's not a plan, it is what I'm planning on doing, but I'm going to reach out to the East Montpelier Select Board just to kind of get a sense on what their reaction and kind of expectations are for that, and to see if that goes beyond what they're trying to work through. But because they were so significant, I didn't think it was appropriate to kind of bring it up and have everybody to go through. I think there's still like one more round of dialogue to be had with the select board.
East Montpelier Select Board volunteered to have their attorney
make the edits,
review, and then it ended up being maybe a bigger process, and rather than burden you with a draft that may not be supported by their select board, we just let them work on it and bring to us what they will.
Yeah. But in general, the report is that everybody was pretty well on we were all on the same page about the intentions of the edit and wanting to clean that up, make clarification and kind of stabilize the dialogue around it.
And even beyond the specific language, the idea of having stability, like these three entities want this thing to continue for as long as possible. We don't want contract language that could undermine us in the future. So that was great that everyone was in agreement about that.
Yeah. So more on that in the very near future, I'd say, once we continue to kind of debrief on that. But lost the agenda. So at this point, I open it up to public comment. Is there anybody attending from the public that would like to make a comment on anything other than what's already listed as an agenda item? Are you? Beavers, yep, fair enough, all right. So we'll move past that and roll into an update from Daniel on the school district.
Where do you want us?
Oh, as close as possible. And if you wouldn't mind, just for the work of recording, giving an introduction. Thanks for having us. I'm Dan, and one of the 3 representatives from the town of Calais on the Washington Central Unified Union School District Board.
And I'm Diane Nichols Fleming, the Berlin rep, one of the Berlin reps.
And we're here hopefully to share a little bit of our process that we're midstream with, to undertake a study to determine if there are any better configurations for our school district out there. For those who aren't aware, our school board started this process, I guess, October or November of last year. We charged one committee, and really a smaller study group to examine some possible different simulations for what our district's configuration could be. That includes school closures, possible school closures. It also includes consolidation of grades in different schools. And really any other sort of different structure of organization that might benefit students in the district. We received, I think in March or April, as a board, the results of that survey, or excuse me, that study. There were 3 sort of possible recommended changes that were put out there at that point, and those are sort of the only options thus far on the table. 2 of those include closing Calais, probably Calais Elementary and probably Worcester, Bodie Elementary. The 3rd option is moving 6th graders over to U32 Middle School, rather than having them in each of the individual elementary schools. So again, those were the 3 options on the table, and we entered sort of a period of public comment immediately. Well, the plan was to do it immediately following town meeting day, and then we had a little bit of a hiccup there, and things got moved out a little bit. In fact, initially, we were thinking of recommending one possible configuration to go forward with in June. And so, based on our budget difficulties and other factors, mainly input from a lot of voters and families in our district, that a longer period of public input and discourse was appropriate. So our working timeline is to consider adoption of a possible configuration in September. And to warn it for consideration by voters in the affected towns affected by closure in November. That's our working timeline. I guess a couple things we want from you all. One, we're curious about how a possible closure of the elementary school in Calais affects our town's plans. And also if there are any formal discussions among you or anyone else in town of Calais government about sort of how you might use the facility if it were closed as a school. Maybe we'll start those 2 questions. Also, obviously available to answer any questions. We're 2 of 14 members currently of the board, so we can't exactly speak with the authority of the board, but factual questions to the board, and we can also bring back to the board comments, questions, concerns.
And do I need permission to speak, since I'm not a town
Please.
member? I just.
We're not that full.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Depends how rowdy the comments are
Yeah.
You start to get pretty formal pretty quick. That, yeah, do you want to offer anything else? I mean, for me, I guess an important clarification would be just a better understanding of what role, the select board plays or the town plays and facilitating the identification and, of what the final option is. It sounds like there's still a recommendation forthcoming from the board. And there'll be another meeting, a public meeting on that that's driven by the board, right, for Calais specifically, or, then so is each one of the communities, I guess, once there's a recommendation, each one of the communities will then get a public meeting, to kind of give feedback on that. Is that my understanding?
That's our working plan, yeah, so. For those who might not be aware, we held community forums in each of our towns on June 26th. Got a lot of constructive feedback about both our process and possible concepts to consider. When we had an online forum last week, got additional feedback. We're meeting on July 17th as a board, as a configuration committee. To consider that feedback, determine what, if any, other models we're able to consider and are worth considering. And also to reconsider our process and our timeline and make sure that that still is the best timeline and process. But yeah, I think the working plan would be, if we were to adopt a plan with effective terms, particularly with closure, that we would have additional presentation, in-depth presentation about what that would look like in all of its aspects.
Because we did reverse engineer, basically looking at if there needed to be a November vote, what makes sense for when the board would make a recommendation. That's for September.
But intuitively, we wanted high voter turnout, so people would have a say in this process, who wanted to say. November and town meeting day are the two logical times to do that, but if we were to wait until town meeting day, a transition would probably be drawn out another year, another school year. That wasn't something we were yet ready to consider.
Question. So I've been out of the country, so I was unable to attend some of those meetings. Can somebody tell us a little bit about what you heard at the Calais meeting? What did the community say?
Sure. Yeah, we had about 20 people in attendance. And there was definitely some concern about the school board not having enough information to make the decision yet. And a lot of people weighed in on additional information related to demographics, additional information related to potential toxic materials in all facilities in the district. Additional information related to the economic impact on the town in many respects, everywhere from tax bills to grand list to other economic effects that escape my mind at the moment. I think it's notable that every parent in attendance at that meeting was supportive of a merger with another school. East Montpelier being the likely one. The parents in attendance, I think there were 5 or 6 families represented, and those folks spoke to sort of a lack of opportunity and the lack of sort of a critical mass in the classrooms that they were seeing adversely affecting their students in terms of social and emotional learning. So that was sort of what struck me.
The thing I keep wondering about is the littlest ones, sending them all the way over to Berlin. And people talked about the transportation, particularly of the very young ones. And what are the thoughts there?
So there is those are some of the specific questions that we are receiving is what are the transportation costs? What is the transportation plan? What does it really look like for all of these? Like, what is the classroom configuration? There's a lot of questions when you consider Berlin as an early ed center. There's a lot, and Berlin would also have to know because that's a change in use as well. And so, I think that we understand and respect that it takes a long time to get these answers to these questions. And we have been told that by August, many of the specifics around our questions will be addressed and answered. And I think a lot of, my sense is from all the towns is we're waiting to see what that is. When we see the real specifics.
Yeah, I didn't, I wasn't able to attend that particular meeting, but you know, I think I can understand it kind of from both angles, because I'm a parent and my daughter is 4.5. And so, I would say the challenging and frustrating side, is understanding that the administrators of the school have a really hard time allocating resources definitively around the early ed, just because they don't have a clear view of who can attend and when, and that leaves a lot of ambiguity for family planning pretty late into the school year when you're having to cobble together, you know, part-time care or what have you. So putting the schools in a position where those student bodies are more consolidated, and that planning can be done with a little more confidence, I think makes a lot of sense. I guess I'd call them the plans or options that were circulated a few weeks ago. We're all really interesting and seem to look at it from a couple of different options. And I would hope that the feedback from the community was that there's a lot of work put into those and weighing a lot of considerations. It seems to me as a community, there's a path forward where the town absorbs the school as an asset for the community and can be used. And maybe that's something that we can use for, it was pretty clearly defined in those contingencies. That there's a path for the communities to look for local independent partners for running some of the early ed instead of that having, like, for the pre-K to get absorbed by the school district. And that can be an opportunity to keep it more local in those buildings that are then owned by the community. It would just require the town, I guess, for managing that relationship between the local service providers and the building as an asset, but it's as close to a cake and eat it too situation as I could see in the path forward, but.
Just in case anyone on the select board doesn't know, the town has the first right to buy the school, should it not be a school anymore, it could be $1, it's in the land record, so that's the procedure that happens if it ceases to be a school.
Yeah, you know, I think worth noting that I think Calais is in a uniquely good position. We've got a building that is paid for and in reasonable shape, but I would have a question for sure about what the liability would be to the town for complying with the regulation around contaminated materials. That would be another clarifying question, I guess, would be whether that's the town's decision. It was my understanding that the community would have to vote to approve the acquisition for $1, right? So we'd facilitate that vote, but it would be the town and voter basis decision, right?
I'm not sure about that.
Oh, okay.
I don't think our articles of agreement speak to that point.
Oh, okay.
That's probably is a decision on the town side.
On the town side. Okay. Great.
Yeah, I'm Craig Line. This is all very hard for me. Daniel, I apologize for coming down at times about verbiage. But I just wanted to follow spade to spade. My daughter went to the school K-6. I served on committees, was not on the school board, but I was a school district moderator for quite a number of years and spent a lot of time in school board meetings. And when the unification came up, we all that were involved at the time had a hard time swallowing that. And as did Worcester. I don't need to recount all this, but the main points were, we have no debt, we have a wonderful facility, we have a wonderful school community. We had a string of wonderful principals. And, even class sizes were starting to dwindle even then. My daughter's fifth and sixth grades were combined. But there were on average 14 to 15 kids per grade. And so my first question is, what is it now? How many students are there per grade at Calais? Now, I know enrollment has gone way down to 1,000.
That's a good question. I don't have, so each year we're presented with a memo from the superintendent that presents the statewide education quality standards for what the target range for classrooms is supposed to be. It also presents what our district's classroom range is, and it also presents a target class size, one for, I think, pre-K to third grade, and one for fourth grade and up. Bear with me for just one moment.
I actually downloaded the document where you have that.
And I think it just has the total.
No,
Oh,
it
does it
says
have it
K
right now?
through 3 in Calais, the average is 13, 4 through 6, the average is 21, which they say is 37% of the capacity as defined by the, whatever that standard is.
That's not grade size, though, that's class.
Those are class
That's
ranges.
class size.
Yes, because my
Correct.
fifth grader last year was in a 5-6 class, and I think 16 or 17. And my third grader was in a class in the low 20s, maybe 23 or 24, and that was also a combined class. So
So per
15
grade,
to 23 per combined class would get you 7 to 12 per grade.
that's kind of what I thought would be in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and Jordan and I actually are in the same boat where our daughters are looking at a classroom next year. Two pre-K classes, 2 pre-K grades, along with the kindergarten, so three class years all combined in one classroom with one instructor. So we're almost at the point in some cases, and the fluctuation is significant year to year where even 2 doesn't, you're not able to reach a critical mass with 2.
Okay, my other question is, do I understand correctly that the voters of Calais, by ourselves, would need to approve this change? It's not total votes this time, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. On that same note, is this, so depending on which configuration comes forward, either 2 towns, Calais and Worcester, or 3 towns, Calais, Worcester, and Berlin, would have to approve. Is this sort of an all or nothing plan? Or is there a world in which it passes some towns and not others, and there's partial? You might not know that.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part, that what we're finding out, and that was what some of the feedback was. You know, I think the conversation would have looked different if the budget hadn't gone down, because I think we would have been in the communities a little sooner with a focus around this conversation. But we did the June 26th forum was really around hearing what our community's creative ideas might be. And so that's, as Daniel said, when we meet on the 17th, looking to see if anything's viable that might change it up. And again, it is that really murky area where, say, one town votes it, but the other towns don't, then what's the, the similar, and then also, what do we, what if they all go down? Then what is our budgeting? So there's a lot of.
And did I understand the language correctly in the document? It seems like the scenario where there's consolidation, 2 schools close, and then Berlin is used as the early edge. Berlin, not only does it have to accept it, and the towns then have to accept the schools, but Berlin specifically then also has to agree after that to use their facility for early ed or dedicate their facility to early ed.
So I mean, so there's a lot of things, so my work outside of the board is as an early ed person. So there are huge parts to that have to happen, so there's an external RFP that would go out, a request for proposals around who would manage that, because it wouldn't be managed by any of the town or school or anyone. So there's a huge lot of packets of that. I do know that we also looked at, one of the ideas too was, consolidating to, East Montpelier and Berlin and Rumney and the pre-K stays there, so that they become pre-K to 5 with 6th graders going to U32. So that's another option that it has been there.
Just to answer your question, I'm not aware of any formal consideration of what Calais would do with that building or any discussion of the process that we would use to figure that out. I've been part of plenty of conversations about, brainstorming. Wouldn't that be nice? But given what opportunity is, but also given what a responsibility it would be to take on that building. And the fact that you're going to be making, or this decision is going to be made ideally by November, it's hard to know how we would engage with that before that decision is made. It's speculative to have a conversation about how do we use this building if we don't even know if the vote's going to pass. So I guess one question to add to your list is, how quickly would you need a decision for that right of first refusal? Like how many months would the town of Calais or Worcester have to let you know if they're gonna take on that?
Well, yeah, and I guess more to that point, and relative to the clarification that it would be the legislative body making that decision, for that, it would be helpful to know what those associated costs are going to be. Even if it were an estimate, it would, what would be our maintenance costs, or potential liabilities for contaminated materials, that sort of thing, because we'll need to be able to make potentially in fairly short order, a pretty rapid, and we didn't need to make an informed decision, and it would be time consuming.
Yeah, so any sort of baseline data that you can provide to us. Sort of like a sales sheet, but you're trying to for $1.
Sell to school.
Yeah. And what does happen? So say, the town says no, thank you.
Right.
Where does it?
Then it's your asset to do what you will with.
Yeah, I would, and that's, another clarification, that's what I'm assuming, that it would be absorbed, by the school district to decide what to do with it, right? To either sell or use or continue to pay for clean up. I would,
One other aspect to, if the town was considering whether or not to buy it, would be another whole round of RFPs for potential tenants or users or programs, just so many balls of wax.
And I do think we would have a baseline, so basically it's a baseline of carrying costs, is what you're looking for, and I do believe that it has been requested as to what is the cost to run each building. And so, that is one of the concrete things that we've asked for, and I believe that could easily be translated into.
I think that we just, the line items from the budget would be pretty informative on that particular element.
And we also have a 5-year capital plan that's broken out by school, so we have sort of what was on our radar for 5 years of maintenance and infrastructure replacement. So that would add to it.
Any other questions?
Well, I was just gonna move on to respond to your other questions. You're asking for feedback about your process and how you're presenting it.
Yeah, and then I think it's really a really important question to us is if from the town perspective, we're missing key questions that we're not asking. Also, any recommendations you have to improve our deliberative process in terms of more transparency, I guess, or potentially questions around It's escaped me. In any case, yeah, that's what, I mean, that's what we were hoping for, I think. Outreach, we're always curious and interested to know if there are ways we can reach populations who aren't yet feeling like they can access this conversation. Just sort of $1 million question in the 21st century, and there are some obvious ways of communicating with sort of specific public, but there are less obvious ways to reach those people who are less already engaged.
But I think also what we're learning from, at least from conversations with Debbie and others, of the unintended consequences. So, you know, which was that original question of, did you have plans, you know, town plans that included maintaining a building, or, you know, what are those? Are there any unintended impacts that will move forward?
I mean, I found the summary sheet really informative, by the time you got into the options, occasionally I got a little bit lost in some jargon on the abbreviations, but I mean, it was clear to me that plenty of analysis was going into it relative to, good data. I would just say be sensitive of the jargon, and I think that in any of these situations, it's going to be hard. You want to try to give as much participation and transparency as possible, and I think there's only so much effort, clarity that can be provided, but you know, I think any documents like this that are easily consumed that we can publicize on the website or leave on the website or make available through the town resources would be pretty appropriate. You know, I don't know that would have been appropriate until there is a solid recommendation. It would just be too many options and too many hypotheticals to kind of chew on. But certainly as we get closer to that vote, it would be good to have something like that to put on the website.
I think it's important to remember that not all parents have a college education and cannot always easily digest what's being put in front of them. So
yeah,
don't just preach to the choir, so to speak.
There is also ongoing at the planning commission, a process to update the town plan. And they'll be talking about education in that plan, and they would be involved in, you know, developing a vision for the future. It seems to me they would be people to have conversations with, at least, no matter what they want to put in the plan.
One criticism that I think we've heard, that's I think worth responding to is that this process is intended primarily to save money. And I think, you know, I know I can't speak for the board, but I guess we identified 4 important priorities. To optimize class size for good instruction, to maintain full-time nursing and counseling in the school, to expand enrichment opportunities, and to limit or eliminate shared use or shared positions across multiple buildings, or very, very small FTE positions, because of the size of the student body in a given school. We didn't include anything in cost, because I think for us, my sense is that for us, the bar is very high. If we're asking a town to close a school, there had better be really positive outcomes, and the advantages had better outweigh the disadvantages. And in order to do that, I could see a scenario in which, yes, there's cost savings from closing school, but that's all reinvested in, you know, these enrichment opportunities we're speaking about. robust counseling services in the school and so on and so forth. I think beyond the bounds of our school district, another potential opportunity represented might be the town reuse of a facility. And I think that's one of the reasons we asked that question, is because we don't want to understand all the sort of dimensions of the impact of the decision, positive and negative. So I hear what you're saying, that it's an unwieldy thing to bring up before it's a real possibility, and yet it's also never too soon, I think, to start the conversation, at least informally. We're gonna try to give people a sense of what the budgetary impact of this is as soon as possible, but we don't know that yet.
Well, that would be important to understand. I mean, you're saying you'll save the money and you'll be able to reinvest, but I haven't seen any numbers that actually convince me of that.
Yeah, well, then again, I don't feel as if we're in a position to convince anyone, because we don't know if we would save any money. I mean, we have a sense from our capital plan. Help me out. We have a sense from our capital plan of what we would spend in the next 5 years on any given facility. We have a sense of the instructional costs in each building. And in that initial study that we were given this spring, the administration sort of laid out those savings, and it roughly resulted in about $1 million in savings, a little less than $1 million in savings
Have
annually.
you published those anywhere?
Yeah.
So, and
Oh, okay,
that's,
so I missed them.
right, well, and that's part of the tension. So, you know, we know that it's been this perfect storm of the legislature and this confusing way of funding.
Yeah.
We know that there's this tension between, how do we maintain a sustainable option that also provides for these priorities? And yet also then what. And one of the things I heard at the forum that I led was really, there are some other priorities we need to be looking at. One is transportation. What is that impact of transportation for kids? And then also just the impact on the community as a whole.
And the cost of transportation
Yes.
as compared to
Yes,
what you said.
exactly, right. And the reality, you know, what we also have been hearing is that unless we can really present some concrete information for people to understand, it's a big change to ask a community to go through if we can't really understand the funding or what's potentially gonna happen in the legislature. So that's also the tension of what we're trying to balance as we go through this, and respecting what communities are saying, but also understanding what we've heard from others as well about the lack of sustainability.
I think that's always going to be a moving target, and you know, it's every year that goes by, things get more expensive, and it's always going to be hard to project what the theoretical expenses are going to be for maintaining a consolidated one, as opposed to the projected cost of maintaining a one dedicated in the town. I think, yep.
Just wanted to add, a number of teachers have left the school this year, and some of them left because they had to, but some of them left because they were afraid that their job wasn't gonna be around. So we're gonna have the additional costs of retraining every year that we don't consolidate, because people will be fearing that they're losing their jobs and lose quality educators.
So the second half of my comment there, that's a great point, and you know, I think that kind of goes to that ambiguity. The longer process is more ambiguous, the more painful it gets and the more obscure it gets. But you know, pivoting a little bit to better understanding the decision to absorb the facility as a community asset. I think it would be important for explaining to folks from the perspective of the town, you know, we've been having other independent conversations about need for supplemental or new town garage facility or premises or additional administrative space. we have community centers that are old, restored, beautifully restored buildings, but they have their own logistical challenges and constraints relative to their use. It is extremely expensive to purchase the property and build from scratch. If the town were to look at trying to stand up a new building. So even though as a school, it is getting on in its years, it is still substantially newer than some of the other community centers that we utilize. And some of them fairly acutely when we're in periods of regional distress relative to floods, emergency response centers, et cetera, et cetera.
I found the frustrated people document. The second bullet point says the town may exercise its option to purchase the subject premises within 1 year of receipt of written confirmation from the district that they're not using it. So according to this document, we have a year. We could always negotiate something else, but according to this document we have. There's also a bullet that says, for its part, and as partial consideration for the district granting the town an option to purchase the subject premises, the town covenants and agrees that for so long as it is economically practical, it will endeavor to maintain the subject premises for community, civic, and public use.
Right.
To answer your question, I shared a slideshow configuration options for the full floor on slide 31. There's a sheet that offers the potential cost savings.
Is that one of the ones that you list as the 3 documents?
I think so.
Okay, do you remember which one? I can't, oh, here it is. Frequently asked questions, strategic plan and configuration study preliminary findings. Is it one of those?
Yeah,
Okay, the configuration study, okay. Slide 23, you said?
31.
31.
Quick question is, has the board contacted or discussed with any other districts, either in Vermont or elsewhere that have gone through this? And I do realize, I'm hearing you, Jordan, say things keep changing more quickly than we can predict. But the state of Maine consolidated their schools, and just a few years later, districts were divorcing, and it didn't work. They didn't say anything. And I cried this song till I was blue in the face to committees in the legislature and to meetings here, and that it happened. And so I understand the flip side is declining enrollment and what to do. Providing a quality education. And I'm just wondering if you have learned anything from anybody else's travails.
Not to my knowledge. I know some other folks are in a very similar place as we and are going through the same deliberations, but I don't know if anybody have recently done something like this or considered something like this.
The question that usually comes up is Montpelier. As we started those conversations with
So is there any other dialogue that I think need to be worked through, or questions that we should touch on in the document?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we'd like to emphasize that we're an open door and would love to sort of have this be the start of ongoing conversation. We'll do our best to keep you updated as a body, of what changes are made and what progress is made, especially insofar as it affects you and the town of Calais. But stay tuned for probably another round of community forums, either in August or September, I imagine.
And one of the, as a Berlin person on the board, it is still my role to represent as best I can people from Calais and Worcester and So it's important for me to hear and for you to also know that, I am trying to be open to learn. And just being reflective.
Thank you, thanks for your time, thanks for all the work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Thank you. Sweet. The agenda, so we. Beavers, yep, plan to address the Kent Hill, road beaver activity. Kari, do you want to kind of give a status update on recent meetings?
So the day after our last meeting, a group of us met with Tyler Brown, the beaver specialist in the state. Took a look at the situation and basically said we have two options. The baffle route or the trapping route, and I tried to, as neutrally as possible, present to you those two options and the implications of both. I can say I've heard from a number of people, including in this room, who, presented different preferences. I'd say I've heard from more people who prefer the baffle route. With typical things, reasoning being it's worked before. And it offers potentially a longer term solution since trapping is, there's no guarantees that it'll be in the same place a year later. On the other hand, I heard it from a couple of people that risk of the beaver dam breaking. And is, there's a significant risk. I don't know how likely that is or how likely that would result in damage to property. It's also hard to it's just a hard thing to gauge. So sort of a risk cost benefit analysis that's not very precise, but try to lay it out for you as best I can. So questions?
Yeah, what about the potential for both? Putting the beaver baffle in, monitoring, and then if it turns out that it's not working well, moving to the trapping option.
Yeah, I don't see why that couldn't be the case.
Yeah.
Great. If the sort of the best practice is trapping to happen in the fall, then and baffle could happen within a month, and baffle don't cost us anything. Seems like.
So the history of that particular beaver dam, we did put a baffle in, but a long time ago. Time gets away from this, as old as I look. And it worked, it kept the level of the waters down. The problem was the beavers then abandoned it because they didn't like the low water level, which was a good thing, but the problem was the state owned the baffle and Tyler realized that it wasn't necessary anymore, so he came to remove it. So if we do put a baffle in, we should purchase the materials ourselves and maintain it ourselves. We do have beaver baffles in Abatement Village, with the beaver dam there, and it's been working for many, many years. So it probably is a good solution. The other thing you can do is you can do a little bit of lowering of the dam before you put the baffle in, so you can actually lower, not significantly, but maybe a foot or two of the retained water before you put the baffle in, and that would then help. Right now, the water level is at the top of the culvert, so if any water comes in, it's going to essentially start eroding the road, because essentially the standing water right there now is way high. And it probably needs to be at least dropped by a foot or 2 foot at the very minimum of that culvert.
Yeah, so for me, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there are layers to this, and my read on most of the sentiments involved are that the first preference is always to try to use some sort of baffle trapping that kind of respects the life of the critter trying to make a home there. But I think there's also kind of a risk assessment and response time element of this as well. And, one of the barriers is that we don't own the baffle and, we don't install them. We rely on outside resources for them, but we've got plenty of need for the use of them around town. And it would make sense to have our own and have them installed in areas where they need to be, used.
So I think Tyler would do the installation because it has the experience, it's just a question of material.
If I could speak to some of this, only because some of what you said is true and valid and some isn't accurate. Because Tyler came and we had a meeting there, and I can fill you in on that if I could.
I feel pretty well up to speed on that. I think.
Well, but he said a few things, and I think Toby's in favor of the battle, so I'm not trying to argue against you, Toby, but he just spoke up.
Sure.
And said a couple things that aren't actually quite true.
Okay, well, take a stab at clearing these up then.
So, I've got, a document here which I can submit so you all can read it. If you don't come to a resolution tonight. Tyler, came back and told us that he removed the baffle because the beavers had left. He didn't say that it was because the water level was too low for them. He did say that he thinks he could drop the water level now by about a foot. When I last looked at it, and it was before this heavy rain we just had, it was about a foot of clearance from the top of the water to the bottom of the bridge. It's actually a bridge, they're concrete. And so he said he would feel comfortable lowering the level about a foot from where it was on June 25th. And that was a full foot of clearance. He kind of makes a notch in the dam and then installs the pipe up and over the dam. On the uphill, deep water side, there's a cage that is submerged and held down with cement blocks. I asked him about costs, and this time around, because the last time the town bought the culvert, the state provided the cage apparatus and paid for Tyler's time. And he said, well, you paid for the pipe the last time around, and so I'll provide all the materials. Now, his sense was beavers left because the water was too low. So, and if new beavers came in, it's been his experience that they could well plug a baffle existing at the site because they aren't used to what it does. He's had better luck with installing a baffle on a dam where there are active beavers. So
are you arguing that a baffle would be ineffective?
No, I'm staunchly in favor of the baffle. It worked for maybe 4 years. He can't remember exactly when he took it out. And I didn't notice. I just all of a sudden noticed it was gone. I didn't know when he removed it or why. And so I think it's a different configuration, and correct me if I'm wrong, Toby or Kari, than what is in Abatement. And yes, it's true, there was a huge washout, but the dams over there are holding back way more water than this wetland. It's not known what would happen if that dam was breached, but it's my understanding that a beaver dam is sounder if there are beavers there repairing it when needed.
Well, I appreciate that input. I think, from my perspective, the history of the approach at the site is somewhat moot because we're living in a period of rapid change. And I think it kind of gets back to a proper risk assessment and guiding kind of policy on what the preferences are going to be. Because it's going to be site specific at any of the locations. And while it may be true about the volume of water that's being held back in Abatement, there's a unique situation with the dam that's going to be under construction in weeks and going through a period of exposure, I guess, through a period of time where we just dealt with some pretty significant flooding. So it's not just the liability of that particular organic dam being held, but it's the sustainability of what happens if there's a failure further upstream of a pretty significant body of water in a short period of time. So,
and to speak to that, last year when there was so much water coming down through that wetland, that beaver dam did not break, even though well, I'm not sure exactly when the beavers were trapped. It was in the summer. Kari looked up for me. It cost the town $265, and it was not done according to the state's preferences, the best management practices, waiting until the trapping season. So it didn't break then, and there's certainly less risk now that the dam is being rebuilt up at Curtis Pond.
so Kari, I have, do we have a price for what the cost of materials would be for installing a baffle?
No, I haven't raised that with Tyler. He offered to pay for it entirely this time since he took it out last time, but I could get that price. I imagine it's not going to be a significant expense in the highway department budget.
Just to be clear, he would pay for it and we own the materials?
He offered to pay for the materials this time and donate his labor. Toby's suggestion, which I think is a good one, is if we're gonna go with a baffle, let's pay for the materials, allow him to build it, of course. But then we wouldn't run the risk of him removing it down.
I'm not sure that's true. Sorry to interrupt. Because he built the baffle on the end, so those were the state's materials and his time to construct that. And then his time to come up and install it, with help, a number of his help do that. So I'm not sure it'd be that simple. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe he would reject that, but
Yeah.
it's a conversation, it's worth bringing up.
But it seemed like a no-brainer to me when he said, well, you paid for it before, I took it out, so. Sort of my bad, I'll pay for the materials. And he had, every expectation that it would work as well as it did the last time.
So how quickly would we be looking at having it installed? What's his availability? for this thing?
Well, it's a good question. He said a month, 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I call him tomorrow, we say a month from tomorrow or be available in 2 weeks. Perhaps what I could do is if you approved it tonight, I could get him up, we could get on his calendar. I could have a conversation about the cost of materials and the ownership of the materials and bring that back to you so that if it's something that's gonna cost us, you can approve it in 2 weeks.
At what point does the dewatering of the Curtis Pond affect us? What's the time period?
It should not significantly, so the current estimate is that they'll be working on the coffer dam a week from today. And then it's 3 or 4 days of construction, and then dewatering would be either like Friday of that week or the next Monday. But it's a fairly gradual process, right? They're not lowering the pond significantly. They have 2 pumps that pump about what the pumps we had last year, about 7,000 gallons a minute, is it? But it's not pumping significantly more water than what goes over the spillway after a heavy rain on the pond side. So it's not, they're not looking at, if anything, over the summer, it will be less water coming through.
I have a question. I think the last thing that Craig just said, if I understood you correctly, was that Tyler said, well, you guys paid for the last baffle, I shouldn't have removed it, my bad.
But
Is that what
no,
you said?
he didn't say I shouldn't have removed it.
But did he say you
There
guys
was a
paid for the
reason.
last one? Because if we paid for the last one and he removed it, seems like he owes us a baffle, but we don't have to pay for it yet.
We paid for the components of the last one, but
Just the culvert, the long piece.
right. And likely reused it somewhere else, I'd imagine, however that works. But, I think it's kind of a moot point. I mean, I think we have a decision now to whether or not we want to pursue having a baffle installed there's at least an offer to have it installed at no cost,
Right.
by the state, and then we have a later decision potentially to either reach an agreement with Tyler on how much to pay if we'd like to keep it ourselves.
Right.
At the point that it's either uninstalled or left permanently, or semi-permanently, medium term. And then it seems to me we also need to have a little bit of a dialogue on what the contingency plan is, should there, what the risk assessment is, on how long it'll take to install and what our period of, exposure, not the actual installation of it. I'm saying the scheduling of the installation. So it sounds like it could be out to a month, and that we may need to take some form of action before that if there is a continued increase in risk to damaging infrastructure or downstream.
What do you have in
property,
mind?
right?
That the height of the dams keeps rising, or?
Well, if he's talking about lowering the water level, that would help.
Yeah, is there, do we lower the dam of,
Prior to the baffle being
prior to the
installed?
baffles, give the beavers some work for a month, before the, just to give ourselves.
They would have
cushion.
to back up overnight.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking there.
I did,
So.
party's request, and the next day it was all back and then some.
I think if we go about, I'm okay with the back, but I'm also okay with the other, if that doesn't work. But I'd also like to see the water, meet the water level as low as we can. It doesn't just affect what's going on there, it affects everything upstream from that. Sure, Rich's property as well. If there's snowmobile trails in there and stuff in there, we always have to deal with much higher water than we used to. So there's other things going on. You get a dam downstream of Providence and Sound, that thing breaks. What's gonna happen there? So.
All right, just a point you might ask Tyler about, as I recall, there were two sizes of culvert that could be used for this, and I don't know if it was 12 and 20 or 8 and 12, I don't remember. Does it make sense to lobby for the larger culvert? I don't know, or was it the larger one? I don't remember the details.
We can evaluate our options, but sounds like we're heading in the direction of approving a baffle route, and then the details of ownership and sizing and all that.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
You just want to make one quick point about maintenance, and I know, John, the road foreman, was concerned about having to spend time, the impact on the road, valid concerns, but Tyler said, I will do whatever maintenance is needed. If the beavers appear to be plugging it or something, messing with it, I just need to know. And I go by there sometimes a couple times a day, and others walk by, anybody can say, hey, it looks like this is not quite right. Then we let Kari know, he lets Tyler know, and he'll come on.
Yeah, I would, for me, it's more about what the trigger point is in the evaluation, the risk assessment, and what the exposure is to the town on this is a fairly unique situation because you've got upstream dams, you've got downstream dams, and then you've got wetlands in between surrounded by private property that complicates things even more. We do have a beaver policy. I think we're having a good dialogue around what we want to prioritize in those considerations. But it would be helpful for the community, I think, to have a clear expectation about what the transition point is, for when is just a baffle untenable relative to the outside risks and costs. But on this particular matter, I think we have some pretty clear direction to pursue a baffle installation. Do we need to take a vote on that, since it's no cost to
I
the
don't know.
town?
Maybe not. Probably not, because I'll just come back to you with more detail.
It would
If you need
be-
it, you'll let me know.
I would like to know, I guess, from Tyler, back to the point of a bigger culvert, this is a pretty unique situation. It's a fairly dynamic relative to its surroundings. And, what are our options for choosing the height of the dam and the water level so that, we're playing a delicate balancing
Okay.
act. Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
And wet, yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that thoughtful comment and chuckling here because it's Vermont.
Yeah.
I'll bet to Tyler, this is not a unique situation. That everywhere that he's dealing with beavers all around the state, and he's the only guy. He lives down in Springfield. It's nothing but dam after dam after dam, whether human constructed or beavers. He did say that he didn't think it was predictable to say, is this dam gonna go or is it gonna be okay? And we can't say.
That's a fair point, and I'll take the opportunity to publicly plug a book called Eager. Read it, it's interesting. It's about beavers and the ecology of beavers. Anyway, so thank you, Greg. And Toby, thanks for the recommendation. Everyone involved. Moscow Woods Bridge.
Yeah, so this came up 2 weeks ago when we were meeting with the Friends of Winooski, and then subsequent to that, I think everyone's aware of the challenges with that bridge on Moscow Woods. But I wasn't informed about, the extent of our engineers' concerns and their recommendations to replace and the history of it. This is going back to at least 2014 when they originally left the town. Know that they are recommending replacement of it. So I want to make sure you understood that since it's come to me. And then I think Toby can probably fill in a little bit more about the situation.
So originally in 2014, and I'm not sure if I was still on the select board or I was operations manager when that happened, but I never saw that report. So essentially 10 years ago, the engineer said the bridge needs to be replaced, there's falling apart, there's problems with it. I came into it in 2022 when the sinkhole appeared. And then there was an emergency situation of stabilizing the abutment. And that's when I wrote a grant to get it repaired. We got a $100,000 grant, emergency repair grant. Then I left employment with the town for 1.5 years, and then nothing happened to follow up on that. When I came back in with you guys, then I pursued it again. It's gone to engineering, so DeWolf Engineering has been working on stream permits and a plan to repair the failing abutment under the $100,000 grant. That process is not complete yet because there's still paperwork. In the interim, we had the July flood and the dam above the bridge became damage beyond repair. People are not going to repair it. So now the discussion is the Friends of Winooski want to take the dam out. So the problem is when they take the dam out, that stream, instead of being a 15 or 20-foot stream on this side of the dam, is now a 35-foot, what they call bankful width. So essentially, the stream that's going to come through that area is not going to be withheld by the dam and narrowed to 17 feet. So the bridge right now is only 17 feet bankful width. So in order to replace the bridge and meet the missing dam issue, we have to make essentially a bridge that has a 30-foot span, bank to bank. I've talked with Michelle Braun at Friends of Winooski, and we're talking about trying to combine both of our needs. This would be a mitigation grant, and combine the two projects together. And I think that's the route we should take. So in the meantime, I've talked with Chris Temple at the Wolf and said, can we do a shorter term minor repair to keep the bridge in place until we then can replace it entirely, rather than spending $100,000 and then in a year or two doing the whole bridge again. So he's waiting for your approval to say, let's take that route. I've also pre-applied for the hazard mitigation funds with the state, saying that this is a mitigation project
that we want to be involved in. Right now, mitigation is paying 100% instead of the 80% that it normally does. So essentially, this is the time to jump in. The one thing I haven't cleared, and I'm not sure how it will work, is Friends of Winooski is not a municipal entity, so they can't apply for the grants. So we would have to somehow roll that into our request as funding the dam replacement. And I think it would work because right now, the stormwater project in East Calais by the post office is totally funded. No participation by the state, and we don't own that property at all. So a public threatened infrastructure that we can reach outside of the town property is an available, I believe it's an available option, but I haven't determined that yet. I gotta reach out to somebody and make sure we can make that happen. But that's where, so essentially I'm asking you guys to say, is that the plan? Put in a minor temporary fix that would last maybe 2 or 3 years and then pursue the hazard mitigation grant for both the dam and the bridge in order to solve that problem.
Hazard mitigation grant, right now we're in that acute period of time where they're throwing 100% at that. Would, if in a perfect world, we already had plans for a new bridge, would we be able to apply for a hazard mitigation with the rationale that the dam is going to be removed and they would need to meet the new specifications?
Essentially, we had a grant to fix the bridge in an existing situation. We're actually going to forego that and just take some monies from there, not use the whole grant. And this is a mitigation. So replacing the bridge was not a mitigation, it was a repair. So that's an entirely different piece that we had in place. Now we're talking about hazard mitigation. So essentially, if the dam is taken out and that stream becomes 30 to 35 feet wide, if there's a flood event, it then gets choked into that 17 foot, and then that threatens the infrastructure of the bridge being washed away. So essentially, that's a mitigation thing. So if they replace the bridge now with the right bankroll width, then that hazard disappears, and that's the benefit cost analysis that they have to perform. And again, so there's a pool of money, and I think it's $80 million that the state has for this round of hazardous mitigation at 100%. So everybody in the state of Vermont can apply for it. We will just be another piece in that list of people, and whether we get it or don't get it, there's no guarantee. It's not a done deal. It's like, what's the highest risk in all the state of Vermont, and who gets the highest priority?
Is there a time limit when you can use them on? Do you know that or?
No, but the real application started in January, so essentially we're telling them that we have projects to give the state emergency management a chance to see what's out there and do some pre-evaluation about what they're going to face. When the grants are issued, I don't know what the time frame is. I mean, most of my grants are 1.5 to 2 years to completion.
So you said we're partnering with the Friends of Winooski. Does that mean we're applying for the grant that would enable them to take the?
Right, so
down?
they as an entity can't apply to the mitigation grant. So we would have to say, we want to include this as part of our project.
But does that include taking the dam down?
Yes,
It does. So
Yes.
they don't have the money to do that yet.
I don't know what they have yet.
No, I think they told us when they were here, they had the money for the study, but they didn't go after the money for deep construction until the engineering is done.
Right. And Michelle said it was $500,000 to $600,000 to take out the dam.
When they were here last time, they looked at all the different grants they could possibly apply for and what worked for what, and they would just sort of pick and choose and try to put money together. So they didn't have we're applying for this grant, it's gonna give us all the money, they just seemed to feel confident that they put it together.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then you're suggesting we work with them to apply for a grant for both projects. I'm calling them two different projects, but they're the same project, for both projects at the same time.
As they say in Geico, bundle it.
But you're suggesting that we go after the temporary fix and not the whole fix?
Well, only because the bridge is still in shaky condition and
Right. And we don't want to
And
wait.
so scaling back, so essentially, Chris Temple said. The scope of what we were working on was a 10 to 15 year fix. What he now is gonna do is scale it back to a 2 to 5 year at the most fix. To just deal with the exact hazards that are there. There's some metal beams that are unsupported and there's some, just some temporary retaining issues to maintain the bridge in its current condition.
And there are grants available for that?
Well, we would use the.
Use the one we've got.
We just would use all the 100,000. And I needed you to tell me, set him on that path so we can find out if that's what you do. And then I'll work with the state and talk to the state on the grant side and say, because we're gonna replace this bridge, we're only gonna use this portion of that grant money. And that's money that turns over every year if it's not used by the returns people do.
Do we need to use any of that 100,000, the original grant, to work with the Wolf to design enough of the, well, let's call it the ideal no dam bridge, to make a compelling enough argument or an accurate enough assessment of?
Yeah, I'd have to check with the state about whether or not engineering for a new bridge would fall under that emergency repair rate.
Great, deal.
I'm not sure, I'd have to get a clarification on that before we, essentially, that grant getting out of it would make, I can find that out.
So, I have a suggestion, if this grant application is going to Vermont Emergency Management, that perhaps we can also tag Nick Imlin's name on it, since he was the Vermont Emergency Management Director of the Year. And so maybe having his name associated with that grant application might be a little bonus.
But everyone's.
There you go. So I have a question about the dam. How certain is it that this dam is going to be removed?
Well, I think that, I'm working with the Friends of Newski on another project, and
Okay.
so there are layers to these. There's the initial identification of it, which they use a certain pool of resources and funding for, and then there's fundraising and grant writing just for the scoping, which can be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how complicated it is. So my understanding, and then there's, once you've scoped it and then produced an informed design, you then have a grant process for trying to execute the work, which can be hundreds of thousands of dollars more, or, over $1 million. And so we're in that in-between phase where they've, I believe, have secured funding to pursue a grant work for scoping it out, but they may not ever have the funds to remove it, even if they have a recommendation to, and the scope and a design relative to doing the work. So that isn't an outside risk, but it would seem like it would make a pretty compelling argument for the hazard mitigation grant if you're bundling a bridge whose existential state is relative to the existence of a dam or not existence of a dam, and its current condition. So if you have enough of a scope in design to apply for that grant to cover the removal.
And it's really probably gonna be the benefit cost analysis that they're looking at with all the other projects they're gonna get in front of them. It's like, okay, so if that bridge gets washed out, how much are you gonna pay for it? Because the dam was taken out and we didn't fix the bridge, and we didn't deal with the bridge being the issue after the dam was removed. So essentially, we're at the whim of whoever's doing the cost analysis of, okay, so I put in an $850,000 bridge because I had to, because it washes out and I lose that road for 2 months and there's no travel through the town of Calais on one of the same thoroughfares. I mean, again, all of those things are the cost benefit analysis that's going to decide whether or not they're going to fund, what they're going to fund. I have no inclination one way or another how we stand against whatever else is on the horizon that they'll be looking at.
There seems to me the potential risk of deciding to go for the 2 to 5 year fix versus the 25-year fix is of that group. And then, and we don't get the hazard mitigation funding, then ourselves the buffer that we might need.
So the look back at 2014 is, hey, guys, this bridge needed to be replaced 10 years ago. It's way past time that we belly it up, so it's either we get a mitigation grant and that's great, and we save all that money and the state pays for it out of our own pockets, our tax, our state tax dollars. Or we write a bond and replace the bridge ourselves on taxpayer dollars. It's just one of those things. I mean, we would have had to do that if the dam was still there. We'd still have to pay for it, because it was not a hazardous condition by the existing bridge. It was just falling apart. It was, you know, it was at the end of its life. So this is an opportunity that we should apply for, and if we get it, great, and if we don't, then the next step is find other resources to do the work anyway, whether or not this grant comes through. But I think we need to target that bridge with total replacement.
If you do this, do the bundle, whatever, you then become responsible for removing the dam down, correct?
I'm not sure, again, right now, the stormwater project at the post office is completely being run by Central Vermont Regional Planning. The town has no interest, has no interaction with that, it's just funded as a project that was designed and is being installed eventually at taxpayer, not our dollars, FEMA dollars, whatever, stormwater dollars. And, you know, essentially it would be the same thing. This is mitigation money where we wouldn't own the dam, we wouldn't own the, we would just be the title on the grant.
Yeah.
Property.
Just thinking through the logistics of the financing and the contingencies, so if we've got the $100,000, we've attributed some of that towards a design that was originally gonna be a short-term fix, and we're gonna have them walk that back to a interim fix, that executing that interim fix, you know, cost of materials, et cetera, does that need to come out of that $100,000, or is that a?
Well, again, so the grant was to repair the dam, so whatever repair we do, put into reimbursement on what we decided. So we don't lose that money on the repair work that we're gonna do as an interim step. And we probably, and again, the full Monty on that bridge repair was getting down into the stream and the footings and all this other kind of stuff that we will not be doing. So essentially, we were probably gonna have to exceed the 100,000 in order to do the repair that we had already started looking at. Because the grant was issued 2.5 years ago at that price. And
Right.
That was the labor market back then, you know, the contractor market. We're not gonna be able to complete the $100,000 repair for the $100,000 now.
No, and so I guess that other question is then, can we use any balance of that $100,000 towards a redesign of the
I'll have to
bridge?
find that out.
It'd be interesting to
Yeah.
see, and the answer is no. What is the cost from DeWolf to do that work, with the assumption that there isn't a dam? And can we reach some sort of agreement with the Friends of the Winooski that we could pursue the cost, or we could pursue paying for the cost of that design work if we get reimbursed for it down as part of their scoping, because they're gonna have to go through a design phase that'll be funded through their grants, and our agreement is if we can get it covered, we will. If we have to pay for it, we will to apply for this bigger bundled thing. But if it falls apart, is there a way to recoup those design costs out of their scoping project? Do they have an appetite for that conversation?
Yeah, I have, I've only had one conversation with Michelle so
Yeah.
far, and this was the sort of, let's look at the big picture,
Yeah.
not the details, and. um, Again, if they found another source for scoping and they can deal with that, and you don't have to include that in our grant request, we're replacing the dam, then that would be fine. I would assume that's kosher. If it turns out that when I talk to emergency management, they say, well, we can include all those costs, and then they don't have to do that, we'll figure that out. But this is all, I mean, their target date for removing the dam is 26. So there's a long window when we get to the final details.
So it'd be good to know, I guess, what the cost would be for designing the new bridge, just that we can.
Well, I'll talk to Chris Temple and get an idea, because he'll be, the local probably
Yeah.
our vendor to do that, and also, so what's it gonna cost to put the design together?
Yeah.
Instead of things.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so I guess, does that mean you guys are in favor of the short temporary interim and pursuing the combination grant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pursue that and keep you up to date.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. So we're a little behind schedule. We've got, the dog protective order up and Kirk, I see. Buffy is on, we also have, Lewis,
Yeah, this is right after. So.
do we want to flip flop or just do it in the order?
That's
On the
okay.
agenda, yeah.
I think we can deal with the protective order pretty quickly, because basically we're just bringing you back what you discussed last time. And we just need your approval and your signature on it. And then Bucky can deliver it to Melissa.
That sounds
So it's
good.
what she asked. My understanding, and Bucky can speak to it, but so we should be very close, my take.
Does anybody have any questions about the revised agreement that was in the shared folder?
Guess I need to understand what's the revision, is the training and the electronic.
Yep, so rather than getting specific on the electronic confinement, we wanted to, it was GPS originally, and so we wanted to not make it so specific in the event there was a more effective or economical option for the owner to pursue. And the request from the dog owner, I think that's it. Are there any other?
That
Well,
was really good.
it acknowledges that the latch has already been installed.
Yeah, that was the other one.
Right.
And then it's just a warning that.
Correct.
Yeah, it looks like what we talked about.
I think the request was to remove the order if she did the same, I believe we said we didn't want to do that, so
That's correct,
And
yes.
then it would be contingent on having a hearing
It
first.
would, we felt that it would be most appropriate to have a hearing and not to put that in this particular agreement.
So Buffy could communicate that verbally and. So she's clear.
But it's on the table if it were requested by the owner. Anyway, so as written, and I have a motion to accept, and I guess authorize me to sign, the agreement. As presented. Bill, seconded, Anne?
Sure.
Great, all in favor?
Right?
Aye, great, thank you. So Bucky will have a signed version of that to share with you and bring to Elsa. Do you have any other input on that?
Sounds fine to me.
Great, thank you for all your work on this, Bucky, I really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
What's Buffy?
So the next item on the agenda is the curb cut application. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the documents?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions about the application? No,
I guess I'm surprised that there's an ditch on the side of the road, it's color, but you say we don't, we don't.
I was surprised by that too. But
It gets to the point where money is needed.
so that would be,
driveway culverts typically,
that's a property owner.
the property owner will purchase,
And we install it.
and we install it, yeah.
Right.
And we'll often order it for them and they'll reimburse us.
So it looks like, they're suggesting between Neil and Toby, 3 contingencies, right? If the shade tree needs to be removed, there's a process to follow. They wouldn't, move the soil in case there's invasive plants in there. And, there'll be some cutting back of trees to improve sightlines, although they're not specific about which ones. And I don't know whether we need to be, but those seem to be the 3 conditions that they're suggesting. Is that what everybody hearing that? I would move that.
So that's a motion to accept or approve the application for a curb cut as applied for, with the conditions being proposed by Toby and Neil.
Except I'm unclear about exactly what needs to be cut back. He just says there needs to be some cutting back. How would we put that into the?
Was that Neil's or Toby's?
That's Toby.
So,
No, it's-
some of those are pretty obvious, and then I guess if there's something that's unclear after, take the obvious ones, we could have Neil sort of advise.
Well, but that's a sightline thing, so maybe that would be more, on the road commissioner perhaps.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll have to sign off on it eventually.
there you go.
right, so my understanding then, relative to a couple of other things would be that, any cutting necessary to achieve, the necessary, sight lines, and if any of that cutting, requires something qualifying as a shade tree, that would be coordinated with Neil.
Yeah,
Yeah, what he wants is a 15-day warning. If it needs to be removed, it needs to be warned. And I'm not sure what does that mean? That people can object?
Well, what is the shade tree preservation plan?
So the shade tree preservation plan, is a policy. So it's a guiding document that kind of defines what the shade tree is and what the process is for evaluating the removal of it.
And is that where the 15-day requirement comes?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So Louis, are you likely to move that tree?
I don't think so. So I've talked to Toby briefly about this. I don't think there's going to be a need to remove a shade tree. And as for the cutting back, there's bushes on either side of where the curb cut's going to be that could make the line of sight bad for somebody coming down Martin. So I'm going to cut those back as well. And I don't think there'll be need to remove a shade tree. Thanks.
So
if there is, I'm certainly happy to give to the.
For amendment. Okay. And Kari will approve the whatever cutting.
finally, yeah.
Final, yeah. Great. So we have a motion and a seconded, and there weren't any substantive changes to the proposed application. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem, thank you.
I have a question. Kari, do you have the approval to proceed to construct the curb cut in your paperwork for the site?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you'll fill out all those conditions?
Yeah.
Okay, because this is not a sign, someone to sign it, we need a form of you guys to sign. Thank you.
You do need a quorum of us to sign?
A form, it's a,
Oh, a
it's-
form.
we need to sign it.
The curb cut permit.
So, Louis, for clarification, please don't start construction until we've had an opportunity to distribute to you a signed copy of the application. But otherwise, no changes. We'll just work on getting you the signatures and send that over to you.
Understood. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. All right. Hotter. Is it getting hotter in here? Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm talking too much.
It's all of the brain power.
Blame it on me. It's fine.
Yeah.
Great. So we are moving on to, the special election. So there was a draft warning, that was posted in the share drive, to kind of identify, what is involved in the timing and logistics for that. Is that right, Keegan?
Yeah, so the warning you all have to sign, you all are warning this election, and then Barbara just put together a ballot, so we have a ballot ready to go, but I didn't want to send it out into the world until you all had approved the warning. One addition to the warning, is an informational hearing, which will be talk a little more about, it's not required to do an informational hearing, our lawyer recommended it, and Mark, I don't know, your council's name, maybe from the state said, not a bad idea, but we don't have to do a meeting. If we do a meeting, it has to be within 10 days of the election, or 10 or fewer days.
10 or fewer, so 10 or, it has to be 10 or fewer days from the election.
I'm confused why it's an informational hearing. Isn't it a more just meet the candidates meeting? What information is?
Well, I guess that's what I would, that's, I think what we have to discuss, and whether or not we want to have one and how we would want to use it. Usually this would be for like if we were having a special election for like a bond vote and it was complicated, we want to review it. I would say, relative to the petition, and multiple applications. Last time, when we were making the appointments, we had kind of a group interview. I think it would be worth just having, given the time frame, it would make sense to have an informational hearing. It would have been nice to include that as a select board meeting, I guess, so that it wouldn't have to be.
Well, July 22nd is, but it's not 10 days.
No, it's not, but now that they were talking, I realized that because it's not a requirement, we could probably do it whenever we want to.
Oh, okay.
Because we're not having to do it within the context of a bond vote or legislative change.
Well, plus people will be voting ahead of time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the sooner the better, I think.
So the idea was to do it at the start of your next meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, Barbara.
So, and just a reminder, that I'm preparing a meet the candidates document, just like I did when you guys were elected. So I have two of the buyers and photos were due to me today, so I've got two before today, and I'm still waiting on the other two. And I need them by tomorrow morning, because I'm on vacation for the rest of almost 2 weeks.
So we're gonna have two candidates for each seat?
Two for each seat, yeah.
I'm losing my voice, so we might run out. Do we have any liability for lack of other term calling it an informational hearing?
I don't think we're not.
It's not really a hearing.
Yeah, we're not required to have it, I think.
And if the town just wants to host a meet the candidates.
Yeah.
And post that as a social event at the town hall, that doesn't even require your vote, I guess, to do that, the town clerk can do that.
Yeah, maybe do it, we could do it. Let's hope it's not 85 degrees again.
Or we could just invite the candidates to come in and make some statements and field questions for, say,
Yeah, why don't we do that?
the first half hour of our meeting or
It's
something.
optional, of course.
And not call it a hearing, just.
So we'll call it an informational session about the upcoming special election on select board positions. So that sounds right for everybody?
So are you still trying to include something about this on this official warning, notice, warning?
I don't know that we would put it on the warning.
Yeah.
So I think it's my understanding that now that the deadline has come and we know who the candidates are, Tegan's gonna post a front porch forum tomorrow that this ballot is now available. So people will be voting perhaps even before your July 22nd meeting. they can wait and hear what they have to say, or they can go ahead and vote if they already know what they want to vote for.
It may be worth putting on the warning just to give people the opportunity, knowing that there's gonna be some time dedicated to
Right.
dialogue. So we'll call it, an informational session scheduled prior to, the next select board meeting and put that on the warning so that anybody who wants to hold casting a ballot until that opportunity, they'll have the ability to make that decision themselves, but otherwise, the warning can go out.
So that will have to be signed by you all, which means I might have that here and so tweak the language and print it out, bring it back. Because it needs to be warned by the 14th. That's the latest day.
If that works for you, Tegan, sorry for the extra running back and forth. A lot of scrambling. All right. So we'll hold off a motion on that until Tegan comes back, I guess, and we'll just.
As long as we don't forget. Yeah.
I'll move to sign whatever Tegan brings back.
Information.
It's not an informational hearing.
It's really not the candidates.
It's a session.
Yeah.
You all want to give me some wording so that we don't have to run back.
How about the public is invited to meet the candidates at 6 o'clock at the beginning of the select board meeting on June 22nd.
The candidates are also invited to show up. Just saying.
Yeah.
We think you could be here.
Some would have to be, but, yes.
And then the only other question I had is this will also have to go to the newspaper. So we want this whole bit in the newspaper too. I'm assuming about the public invited to the candidates.
If it's part of the warning, I think it would, yeah, that's what we're
And
going.
they'll be able to zoom in, right? So that'll be.
And then that's there.
Is there a second to the motion and then we'll just sign it at the end of the meeting? All in favor?
Any other election questions?
Tomorrow.
Well, not right now.
You printed them already?
They are designed and she has approved it. They're not printed,
They're
but
ready.
they'll be printed tomorrow.
Wow. You guys are efficient.
Well, thank you.
Well, people already started asking for primary ballots and a number of people said, oh, but do you have the other ones yet? No, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna wait. So I think there are a number of people who really want their ballots now.
So the state primary ballots are available now?
Yes.
Okay.
That was from
We've
for
had them for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, as soon as we get them, people can vote.
All right, cool.
Did you guys actually vote on this? Had a motion, did you vote?
All those in favor?
Right.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Marty.
Thanks.
Oh, we can open windows.
Road grader bond. Was everybody able to, review, Kari's, memo?
So a series of documents there, need a bunch of signatures, but it follows the same format as the Curtis Pond Dam bond, which 3 of you were involved in. It's the same attorney. So very much the same process. You're being asked to adopt a resolution and there's loan agreement and things. Just note that we won't know the final interest rate until closing.
Yeah. All right, I'll move we adopt the resolution and sign the documents.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No?
Excellent.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Barry.
So they were reviewing.
Nice of them to give us something like.
Kari, do you wanna, run through, the
Okay.
report?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The first one, I think Jamie's the first.
Yeah, Jamie, you should definitely do that. Unless you want Kari to do it, that seems a little unfair.
I think,
We're not accepting.
right, we decided, Perry and I decided to wait. Cause we're still doing we wanna accept the donations once in the exact amount that's gonna come instead of doing it piecemeal. So we just have more paperwork and cash flow wise, Perry said that was totally fine. And then the current thought the final $200,000 that's a loan, the CPA has to start paying interest on as soon as the money is, the check is written. And so Kari and I were thinking that they basically said they need 72 hours notice to get us the check. And so if cash flow wise, it doesn't matter to us if we get that final piece now versus the end of August or whenever the bills start coming due. We see no reason not to postpone that final 200,000.
I could read the
Yeah.
last.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense to everybody.
So the CPA some interest.
So the only other,
Well,
no,
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question on that quick? So that the dam needs to be complete, substantively completed right by October.
Yeah.
So just to kind of anticipating any perception that, we're kind of protecting the town's outside exposure on absorbing any of that cost and not working on it, et cetera, would be worth considering, putting some sort of deadline on when we would expect the CPA to start that, so.
Well, so there's the donations, the fundraising that's already happened. I think we can definitely accept that in 2 weeks.
yeah,
And use that to pay the expenses. We're gonna start to see, I would expect by the next meeting,
right.
some, some good requisitions. So, and then the 200,000. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about that. We are earning interest on the bond proceeds that are sitting in the
Nice.
bank account. So, to your point, it's like, whose interest?
And yes, I'm wondering, but put a deadline on when we accept donations and then another deadline on when the CPA would agree to to finalize that second one and call it something like August. August 15th or something like that.
That seems reasonable.
A receipt of funds.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to, step out of my select board role and take my Robinson Selma hat on just for a second. And we talked about dewater. And from Robinson Selma side, we need to have some type of assurance that someone's gonna be checking on things downstream. The effect on not only the Beaver Dam, but the Robinson Selma thing. Flood last year didn't compromise the dam, but it moved the mill some, because things don't close the way they used to. So we just want to make sure that whatever is happening upstream doesn't cause water to top the dam. So need some kind of mitigation. Okay, that can start.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch then once it starts, but as I said earlier, what they told me is that it won't be a significant increase in water flow, although we've had, the pond's higher now than it was when we had these discussions.
Yeah.
So it might be.
So when the dewatering starts, it'll be important within 24 hours or something, and then ongoing to monitor what's going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they can probably taper back if they need to.
Yeah.
Because you got a big storm in the middle of that, let's say, you certainly wouldn't want to stop dewatering all and let the water, rest of the town get level.
Right. The first dewatering will just be the code. Which is basically this dam side. Point. Which he thought would only take, be 24 hours or so with the pump running.
My understanding is that now during construction, there's liability policy on the part of the contractor. So if we're able to damage downstream relative to their activity, they're treated on their insurance. But, always good to take preventative. cautions early. So that should be on their radar, Bill, because they're liable for impacts down the
I
street.
guess I'd like somebody to say that.
Yeah, I will be sure to have that conversation. Yeah, it should, yeah.
So we're not taking any specific action at this time about the donations other than.
I think so, the next meeting, yeah.
We'll have to figure some.
Yeah, and no other major updates except that they're supposed to be, water a week from today.
I just want to say congratulations on a wonderful ribbon cutting. So
Yeah.
it was very maple corner.
And well attended.
Yeah, that was a great crowd.
Yeah, it did.
That was a great
So
crowd.
It was a good
really,
gathering.
it was a great gathering. I thought all the speakers did well at keeping their, keeping it short. So the viewers, you have 3 minutes, not 15. But yeah, I thought it went very well.
Well, thanks, Jamie. Financial report?
Yeah, so the documents are in there, unaudited year end, and pretty pleased with how things turned out. You know, we had some significant challenges this year. One on the horse issue, you know, the ongoing, and then the gravel budget, which was, we were over budget in January, there's so many mud seasons. So all in all, we did pretty well. On the revenue side, we exceeded our budget projections, both general government and highway. So that was good, especially in terms of delinquent tax. I think we really did well. And then remember that the town administrator position was essentially that was budgeted in the highway department. And then the decision was made in the fall to switch that over to general government. And that sort of explains why there was a surplus in the highway department's budget specifically. And as a result of that vote that was taken at town meeting, that surplus went into the highway capital equipment fund. And so that, because that surplus is going forward, that's where they end up. So there's that, and then, you know, feeling pretty good about our cash position because we've continued to get the FEMA reimbursements. We got another one today. And we're still expecting, we're about halfway through that process, so that's good. And then it's just gonna be interesting when we start getting these dam construction requisitions. We've got the bond, we've got these other funds coming in, but I'm not really clear on what the pacing of those requisitions is gonna be relative to the input. So it's gonna be interesting, but it doesn't feel nearly as tight as it did 2 months ago. So overall, pretty good. My focus this week is really getting ready for the audit, which is gonna be on Monday and Tuesday. We're gonna close the office Monday and Tuesday for that field work and just take over the town office. Questions?
So we're 70,000 in the hole. And do you think the FEMA reimbursements will cover that as we get there?
So FEMA is essentially gonna make us whole. You know, what we're expecting is pretty close to 100% reimbursement, which, you know, based on the legislature's, was a mid-session budget adjustment. They said that they were going to, you know, the state's portion was gonna be larger than we expected. Plus there was some grant money to bring it pretty close to 100%. So the whole 1.4 million is going to be replaced in terms of our cash. It doesn't impact that $70,000 loss, but we started the year with a pretty healthy fund balance, I understand. So we are replenishing that.
But a lot of the FEMA is paying for the road crew salaries that we would have been paying for
That's true.
anyway, so.
That's true, and I don't have that number at my fingertips, but a good portion of what our road crew earned last summer is going to be reimbursed, and so that in a sense does help offset that 70, if not increase it. So I would have to go in and compute that, but I haven't.
So
done
don't
that.
know yet, okay.
But it is a significant amount because that was their focus, right? From mid-July up to,
Yeah.
when I got here, they were still working on it somewhat. I think they were starting to transition. The lion's share of those reimbursements are contractor, just so you're aware. I think we were very fortunate to have those contractors lined up and mobilized right away. Because there are towns that are still trying to get repair work done. They just didn't move as quickly.
So, any other questions on the financial reform? Thanks, Carmen.
Good.
The memos for the computation and property tax, are those separate, or do you want to handle those now?
So, well, do you want to do town clerk report? I don't know if we've covered everything or.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were gonna do that in your report or if you. But,
Yeah, it could be anywhere. The compensation adjustments for the beginning of the fiscal year, that's just an FYI. All of that was decided by our labor contract or in the budget. So that's just an FYI.
Tegan, you have anything to report other than signatures that you need now?
A lot of reporting, I like a lot of state feeds, they're very hot right now. Other than that, we did have a visit today, Carter, did you talk about this while I was gone? From Ed Blackfelter from Nimerick.
No.
And he mentioned how the reappraisal was coming, because they're gonna be starting soon. They're the ones who will contact us when they're ready to get started. And he was just working out logistics, because he said sometimes, especially in the first year or first 6 months or how the early part stages of the reappraisal, it'll probably just be 1 or 2 people who could easily work in the town office. But he says he has 20 people on his staff. If at any point he feels like he needs 20 people, he's gonna bring 20 people. Where else could he work? How else could he work? He needs access to Nimerick, to the data that we have. And so we talked about maybe providing him with a VPN, which is what we use to access the software, sort of the connection to our virtual desktop, if you really think about it. The other thing he said, well, we could just put you all on the cloud. And there's a lot to that we still need to learn about, but it's an idea that keeps getting talked about, so it's an idea you'll see soon. He was on his way home from somewhere else and just brought it up to us, and we didn't really have time to hash it out, but it is something that we'll need to figure out. Either A, are we gonna go on the cloud, or B, how are we going to accommodate 2 to 10 to 20 appraisers doing their work over the next few years. So that's just a little piece of information to be. I think if there's anything else. The grand list was formally lodged today, it's done. Signed all the things, so that was pretty exciting with that, so that helps Cargill move forward with all the taxes.
Yeah, we'll be setting the tax rate, what, next,
2 weeks.
in 2 weeks?
Yeah, so that was one of the things I, wanted to preview, just, and I wasn't really able to dig into it because I've been so busy, but I did provide that 1 pager from the town report that, the voters saw in sort of estimating what will be the tax, the implications of approving the town budget and all that. So the big variables there are the final education tax, since the voters approved everything, the budget as proposed, those budgetary numbers are pretty solid. But the big variables were the education tax, how that finally ended up, and then the grand list, which we have today. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna be working on that and, getting you that recommendation. But I just wanted to, sort of preview that and make sure you're aware of what are the key variables. So you can just be thinking about that. So, it's a big action. It's one of the bigger ones, right?
Did I see, the Times Argus report that was kind of a the initial debriefing of the education tax, or how that.
Yeah, I don't know how informative that really was, but it was showing the The interaction between
The
the,
takeaway was there were some really big numbers in there, or at least increases, and the estimated increases to Calais in particular, relative to the school budgets that were passed were on the low side of middle, relative to what everybody else was seeing.
but higher than we used to.
Yeah, yes. But not 14%,
Yeah.
or 21%.
When we get your grades, everything will shift. right?
Everything else should be. Interesting. All right.
Barbara, did I miss anything? Did I miss anything?
The cloud conversation, with Nimerick, I think we had talked about this, or at least I vaguely recall some kind of anecdotal feedback on why there could be some hiccups with the cloud-based Nimerick. And
Honestly, the first thing that has hesitate is he said it's only $10 per user per month. And they calculated with Barbara, Kari, me, zoning and listers. And Sandra, that's $60 a month
right,
in perpetuity, which is a big chunk of change that he seems to think was a steal. And maybe it is, but
It's not budgeted.
it's not budgeted and it's, you know, he hasn't proven to us that we need it. In fact, I will say anecdotally, my husband was in there and he said, so the only thing it sounded like in that conversation is he wants you to do it because it makes his job easier.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of how it felt, but you know, it was not a thorough presentation. So we would definitely pursue a more balanced conversation if we can. in the future
Yeah.
before we make any decisions or even bring any recommendations. to you.
I know with other platforms like that are that substantial, when they go cloud-based, it'd be good to like get some feedback from other town clerks and obviously
for sure.
that have gone cloud-based because they can be a real headache.
Yeah.
If there's connectivity issues, or disruptions, I guess the other thing to consider is that may change the calculus for RV technologies and server replacement considerations. So even if there's a short-term increase in carrying costs and we can get confident, reassurances that connectivity issues won't necessarily be a problem. And then realize maybe some savings on the server side because we might be able to go to a more virtual server.
And I'm due for an annual check-in with Ruben next month, so that will be part of the conversation.
Awesome, thanks.
One thing he said that I hadn't heard before was that within 2 years it'll be required, but the
That-
whole company is going that route. And that might be part of the sales pitch, but
That
You
was
did say
something else, someone else from Nimerick had said, when Barbara and I had a docs question, I said, well, everyone's gonna be there eventually, so they all seem to be.
Yeah, subscription model is universally great for everybody who's. Seen that. Well,
We also
thanks.
don't have any complaints about how it's working now. Now that we have CD fiber, I haven't heard any complaints from you all. Everything's great for me. So that's another factor.
Yeah, I guess that would be another one, what the scalability of remote access is, for them, as informed by RB, now that we have better connectivity. And I guess that are they gonna be making any edits to Nimerick at all? Or any changes, or are they just pulling data, for their reporting?
the reappraisal.
Yeah.
They said they're just pulling it into the cloud and then on their tablets when they put it back.
Hmm. That'd be another good question for RB. Is there could be like data corruption issues with remote access that would be less corruptible with cloud access.
Yeah.
Is BT High fully up and running, or is that still? Yes.
There are no clerk requirements for BT, but I know the listers are using it.
Okay, you're fully up and running, that's checked off the list.
I believe so.
Is there anything else to, I don't know, say something?
So the mess of documents to sign.
Just a mess of documents to sign. And the CAI, so sounds like we're getting some
So we have a draft of the new site available. I found it to be buggy. I can't click on a parcel and access the data. You can search and find, is that your experience?
I only used that one day last week,
Yeah.
but that was the same experience. If I clicked, nothing happened.
So I didn't think it was worth sharing with you yet, but once it is, then we'll share. You have to, set up a password, login password, and they're happy to do that, but just didn't think it was worth your time yet. But we're making progress.
It did look pretty neat once you got into somebody. You could search by name or parcel or address. And once you got in there, there was a nice amount of data already in there. So.
Is there in the contract like a guarantee for satisfaction or we get our money back type thing or?
I don't hold out. I'm sure they want us to be pleased.
Should have read that one.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I guess the reason I was asking, because we have other GIS resources and before we hand those off or not subscribe to them.
Yeah, we just
it'd be good
renewed
to
with
have
the other
maybe,
one.
like Sarah come in just to like,
Yeah,
she has so much experience with that, like just to have her like do some real tire kicking,
yes,
before we say, yeah, we're happy and thanks for this thing.
yeah, absolutely.
Great. Can we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Is there anything in the shed thing?
There is not anything to report at the moment. Would anybody else love to adjourn? Bill made a motion to.
I'll second it.
Loving to adjourn. All in favor?
Hey,
Thank you.
thank you, guys. Listen, yeah, what happened in that meeting?
Oh, my goodness.
It's a lot. But that's not all of it either.
What have you given me? Nobody
I'm gonna
told
put
me.
mine on top. Would you sign my petition so I can be on the ballot to run for another term as justice of the peace?
Okay, but if this is in November, you're early, right?
Finishing
Well,
touches that we're.
I have to turn it in August.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's
Did it
okay.
backwards.
Taking what?
Can I sign over
Yeah,
here?
yeah, just reverse it.
Put a little arrow.
Like, roll up and behind. Yeah, they do.
All right.
Hey, John.
Dialogue.
So you and I don't have to go over that.
That's what, that's what. I didn't read it.
Wait a minute, is this the same thing? Wait, I'm not reading before I.
Tegan brought one in.
Yes, so this is a different one that I just signed. The legal voters are invited to attend a meet the candidate session,
Okay.
beginning at 6 o'clock. Okay, so that is for you.
I'm less concerned about that.
Resolution.
It was only Orca.
Yeah.
Lewis and Buffy.
And Lewis.
So for this one, does it matter what order we're?
No, it doesn't matter.
Does anybody else recall who's on group besides Buffy and Louis Porter?
Those are the only ones.
I didn't see other.
No, Mark Mahali was on very briefly.
Oh,
It was probably.
Yeah, for like 2 minutes. she went
this
there.
is Jordan only, right?
Remember that?
Is he visible or invisible?
Yeah, could we see
Big
him?
face.
Mm.
Saw the name.
And this is the curb cut. Is there a place to sign that?
Nothing controversial enough.
No. Point clarification. But yeah.
Okay, Town of Calais accounts payable.
That's not the permit. It has to be the permit for. That's okay, I have.
Barbara is on it, so I'm just signing here somewhere.
You don't have to pick that line. You
I
can
could do any of them, that's
Any
random.
line you want. Yep.
This
It is
is notice of
random.
approval to proceed with the curb cut. That's it.
So
And these are,
Conditions have been written on the card.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
ooh, this is a thick one. What is all this?
Thank you.
what are you gonna do, Barbara? Are you leaving? Are you going somewhere?
No, my family's coming up from Virginia for the next 10 days.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll be on number 10 Pond.
Nice.
Can I borrow?
Barbara.
Here, can I borrow your pen, Chris?
There is.
Okay, then these,
Now.
these are the bond
A
documents.
whole pile of junk, but on top of that.
With many, many little yellow
And
covers.
there are a few of those,
Thank you,
some of
thank you.
those are select board, some are treasurers.
Okay, okay.
It's unlocked, yeah. if you
So this
shove
has
it in
all
past,
been
you-
previously
there's a
approved and
plastic
discussed
covering that
and
right here.
vetted
Great,
and
thank you so much. I appreciate it, Jake.
treasurer.
Okay, bye, guys. Thank you. Congratulations.
Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, you'll have something from me tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. I'm leaving it.
Do you
here,
need another
So I
pen?
need it in the morning.
Well, yes, I didn't.
Okay, thank
bring
you.
it.
All I have is markers. I'm not
We
yet,
are.
sorry.
We are the good old boys club.
Does anyone have a pen for Ann?
Or boys for that.
Oh, there's no. Jeez. Does anybody have an
Good night,
extra pen?
everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Rose.
You're welcome.
Oh, now I.
Yeah, you stole Jamie's pen.
I have my own, it's in my hand.
Here, Jamie.
Shake down. Again. I'm not the one putting it in front of me.
So I'm assuming duly authorized is a town employee. By duly authorized, okay. Those are not mine. Would you like a pen?
Please.
And I have, those broken lines.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Who's the executive director? I'm gonna say. The executive
Oh,
director of the
that's,
bank.
of the bond bank.
And then is this another one? Oh, no,
That's
that's
just
just
for me.
you, just you. Okay.
Almost done with the bond,
Oh, okay.
permit.
No rush.
Separate thing.
Oh,
But Barbara did.
Barbara was on it. There's one more over here, Ann. So Bill, did you end up running for the 2026 term?
That's what we do.
Yeah, well, just checking.
Yeah.
So you're good till 26
I'm
then?
facing, I guess I'm
Yeah,
facing off with, John Winston.
well, who's the other one going for the 25 term? I have no idea.
Jim, we don't know who he is.
No, that was the one we made, the good old boys club, also from Abatement, but.
There's two people from Adamant.
You each have an.
Awesome. The shady dealings person.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
I've already floated a proposal to East Montpelier to move the town line, so.
There you go. Wait, did that just blow over?
That counts, shady deal.
Yeah, she is. North Montpelier.
Is that right?